Hello! Nandito na naman ulit tayo sa ating discussion. So, ang discussion natin for this video is about PAS 28, Investment in Associate. So, hindi kasali rito yung investment in joint venture kasi dun yun sa ibang subject. Since tayo ay Intermediate Accounting Part 1, so ang focus natin is investment in associate. So, wag na natin patagalin pa. So, let's start. So, let's start our discussion first with the concepts. So, again, ang ating topic is under PAS 28, which is the accounting for investment in associate and joint venture. So, since tayo ay nasa Intermediate Accounting 1, ang focus natin is yung investment in associate. Yung investment in joint venture is under an advanced accounting subject. So first, let us define what is an associate. So sabi rito, associate is an entity over which the investor has significant influence. So since ito ay investment in associate, it means that we are the investor. So tayo yung nag-invest. It means the associate is the investee, the entity in which you have an investment. So, bakit natin tinawag yung investee na associate? Kasi meron daw sa investor, which is tayo, na significant influence. So, ano ba itong significant influence for an investee to be called an associate? So, ang significant influence under PAS 28 paragraph 3, sabi niya, this is daw the power to participate in the financial and operating policy decisions of the investee, which is in this case the associate, but not control or joint control over those policies. So, kapag sinabi nating significant influence, ibig sabihin daw si investor, meron siyang power to participate in the financial and operating policy decisions. Ibig sabihin, ito lang yung power ng investor to participate in the management decisions of the investee. So, pag sinabing participate, ibig sabihin, kasali siya sa pagbuo ng mga decision para ma-manage yung investee. But, not control or joint control over those policies. Kasi, pag sinabing control, kapag ang isang investor ay may control over the investee, ibig sabihin, every decision that such investor will make, as long as there is control, yung decision ng investor na yon, yun na yung gagawin in the management of the investee's operations. Kasi nga, yung investor has control. Siya yung nasusunod kahit na mayroon pang mag-disagree. Kasi nga, yung investor has control. Which is not in the case under significant influence. Kasi, kung ano man yung gustong mangyari nung investor na may significant influence over the investee, not necessarily yung gusto niyang mangyari, yun yung gagawin para sa management ng investee. Kasi ang meron lang siya ay significant influence. So, ano yung nagagawa niya? So, ang nagagawa lang niya is yung marinig yung boses niya at makapagbigay siya ng mga ideas or suggestions na maaaring makapag-influence sa decision ng management sa paggawa or sa pag-formulate ng mga policies ng investee. Unlike kapag control kasi, ang investor na may control, whatever decision of such an investor, yun na yung mangyayari kasi meron siyang control. Pero kapag significant influence, hindi niya yun magagawa. Ang tanging magagawa lang niya ay magbigay ng mga ideas, ng mga suggestions na sa tingin niya is makakabuti para sa pagmamanage ng investee. So, paano daw natin malalaman if ang isang investor has significant influence? So, merong mga instances specified in the standard under paragraph 6. Pero syempre, ito ay not all-inclusive. So, some of this daw, ang investor daw has a representation in the board of directors. And syempre, alam naman natin, ang board of directors, ito yung group of people that is responsible for the management of a corporation. So, kung ang investor ay may representative doon sa board of directors, ibig sabihin, part siya ng management team. Kasi nga, ang board of directors is yung parang management team for a corporation. Then, sabi niya, participation in policy-making process. And again, sabi rito, participation. Ibig sabihin, kasama siya sa pag-formulate ng mga policies ng investee. Then, third, material transactions between the investor and the investee. So, ibig sabihin, pwedeng magkaroon ng transactions sa investor and si investee. Kasi si investor is a separate company from the investee. So, since both of them have their own businesses, pwede silang magkaroon ng transaction from one another. Pero sabi, para daw masabi natin na may significant influence, dapat yung transactions na yun should be material. Pag sinabing material, it means yung transactions ay possible, significant as compared to a regular or a normal transaction. So, pag significant, pwede natin masabi na malaki yung amount of transactions dahil malaki yung mga presyuhan o kaya naman madamihan yung transactions. Then, yung pang-apat daw is interchange of managerial personnel. So, pag sinabing interchange, it means si investor and investee, pwede daw sila magkaroon ng exchange of managerial personnel. Pwedeng yung managerial personnel ni investor ay gamitin ni investee or vice versa. Then, last is provision of essential technical information. So, yung information, syempre, alam naman natin, when it comes to business, yan ay very confidential, di ba? So, hindi yan pinamimigay basta-basta. So, ibig sabihin, if you have access to that confidential information, so probably you have significant influence. So, itong mga to ay 5 lang sa mga possible situations that can be used to determine if there is a significant influence. So, syempre, aside dito, meron pa mga possible scenarios that could be evidence that significant influence exists. Then, sabi, under paragraph 9, syempre, PAS 28 pa din, an entity loses significant influence over an investee when it loses the power to participate in the financial and operating policy decisions of that investee. The loss of significant influence can occur with or without a change in absolute or relative ownership levels. So, again, syempre, ang sabi nga natin, ang significant influence is the power to participate. And if you will lose that power to participate, so it simply means you will lose significant influence over the investee. So, ang sabi dun sa last paragraph, the loss of significant influence can occur with or without a change in the ownership levels. So, ano ibig sabihin ito? So, punta tayo sa next slide para mas maintindihan natin kung anong ibig sabihin ng last paragraph. So, who can exercise significant influence? So, under paragraph 6, sabi niya, unless otherwise proven, the following assumptions apply. Ownership of 20% or more of investees' voting power have significant influence. Then, yung ownership daw of less than 20% of the investees' voting power does not have significant influence. So again, itong mga to ay just assumptions na ang sabi, we can assume that significant influence exists if yung investor has a 20% or more ownership of the investees' voting power. At kapag mas mababa naman daw sa 20% ang kanyang ownership, pwede nating i-assume na wala siyang significant influence. Pero kung papansinin nyo, ang sabi rito, unless otherwise proven. Kasi ang basis natin, if the investor has a significant influence over the investee, is through observation. Dapat nakikita talaga natin na nakakapag-exercise si investor ng kanyang power to participate, regardless ng kanyang percentage of ownership. So again, ang pinaka-basis natin, if significant influence exists, is dapat na-observe natin na yung investor really has a power to participate. Pero kung wala, regardless kung siya ay less than or more than 20% ng ownership, so wala pa rin siyang significant influence kasi hindi niya na-exercise. Pero ang sabi dito under paragraph 6, pwede nating i-assume na may significant influence kapag ang percentage of ownership ay 20% or more, unless otherwise proven. Ganon din kapag less than 20. Ang assumption natin is wala siyang significant influence unless otherwise proven. Kasi kahit siya ay less than 20% lamang ang kanyang ownership, possible pa rin na siya ay may significant influence. Nakakapag-participate siya sa policy making. So, yung ibig sabihin ng last paragraph kanina na ang entity daw may still lose significant influence even with or without a change daw in the relative ownership. Ibig sabihin lang nun, kung example, meron kang 30% ownership, pwede mo pa rin mawala yung significant influence kung wala ka ng power to participate. So, pagka ganoon, pwede mong masabing nawala ang iyong significant influence even without a change in your percentage of ownership. Then, kung papansin ninyo, kailangan daw 20% or more of the investees voting power. So, ano tong tinutukoy na voting power? So, ang ownership daw natin must include voting rights. So, ano tong ownership na to na may voting rights? So, ito yung mga ordinary shares. So, syempre, alam naman natin that we have two classes of shares, ordinary and preference shares. And between the two, only ordinary shares normally have voting rights. So, bakit ordinary shares lang at hindi preference shares? Siyempre, alam naman natin na sa corporation, ang decision making or policy making is dependent on votes. So, paramihan ng votes. So, yung mga owners that have a voting right, so sila lang yung maaaring makapagbigay ng vote. Which means, sila lang yung pwede makipag-participate sa decision making or sa policy making. At ito yung mga ordinary shares na wala sa preference share. So, ibig sabihin, yung mga preference shareholders ay normally non-voting shareholders. So, kung ang preference shareholders ay mga non-voting shareholders, it means hindi sila kasali sa management ng corporation. Bakit? Kasi nga, sila ay preference shares na. Ibig sabihin, marami na silang natatanggap na benefits as compared to ordinary shareholders. So, bakit pa sila bibigyan ng boses sa pagmamanage ng corporation? Kasi preferred na sila when it comes to dividend distribution. Sila yung nauuna kapag dividend. Sila rin ang nauuna kapag asset distribution. Laging residual lang ang kay ordinary shareholder. Kaya between ordinary and preference shareholder, sino ang may concern sa management ng entity? Siyempre, ang pinakamas may concern is yung ordinary shareholder. Kasi nga, ang kanilang interest is only residual. Kung may matitira after magbigyan si preference share. Si preference shareholder, medyo hindi na siya ganun ka-concern sa magiging result ng operations ni entity kasi nga alam niya na siya yung nauuna when it comes to dividend distribution at asset distribution. Though concerned pa rin siya syempre dapat, pero mas concerned pa din ang mga ordinary shareholders kasi magkakaroon lang sila ng part sa dividend or asset distribution kung may matitira after the preference shareholder. Kaya sila yung pinakamas may concern sa condition or sa situation ng company, kaya sila lang yung may boses when it comes to the management of the entity. Kaya sila lang yung may voting rights. At sabi rin dito, or potential voting rights. So, ano naman tong mga potential voting rights na to? So, sabi dito, ito daw yung mga debt or equity instruments that are convertible into ordinary shares that are currently exercisable or convertible. So, again, pag sinabi natin potential voting rights, ang mga to ay hindi pa talaga exactly voting rights. Hindi pa talaga sila ordinary shares. Kasi yung ordinary shares, yun yung may voting rights. So, as of this moment, potential pa lang. Hindi pa talaga sila ordinary shares. Pero, pwede silang maging ordinary shares once na yung instrument has been exercised or converted into ordinary shares. So, dyan na papasok yung mga share options, share warrants, or share rights. So, ano yung accounting for potential voting rights? Ang sabi rito, they will be accounted for under PFRS 9. So, ngayon, let us proceed to the equity method. So, ano ang ibig sabihin ng equity method? So, ito daw yung accounting for investment in associate and joint venture. So, yung accounting treatment na gagamitin natin sa atin ngayong investment ay tinatawag na equity method. At under equity method, ang concept daw behind this accounting treatment is that the investor and the investee are viewed as a single economic entity. Ang ibig sabihin nito, the investor and the investee are one and the same. So, paano natin ina-apply yung single economic entity under equity method in accounting for our investment in associate? So, yung application ng single economic entity, pwede natin makita yon sa paragraph 3 ng PAS 28. So, ngayon, let us define equity method based on the definition of the standard PAS 28 under paragraph 3. So, sabi niya rito, the equity method is a method of accounting whereby the investment is initially recognized at cost and adjusted thereafter for the post-acquisition change in the investor's share of the investee's net assets. The investor's profit or loss includes its share of the investee's profit or loss, and the investor's other comprehensive income includes its share of the investee's other comprehensive income. So basically, sabi rito, ang ginagawa daw kapag equity method is ina-adjust natin yung ating investment in associate account based doon sa changes ng net assets ni investee post-acquisition. Pag sinabi nating post-acquisition change, yan yung mga changes sa net asset ni investee or its shareholders' equity na nangyari after we obtained significant influence. So yun yung tinutukoy dito sa post-acquisition change. And again, this refers to the changes in the shareholders' equity of the associate after we obtained significant influence. So ibig sabihin, yung mga changes na mangyayari sa shareholders' equity or net assets ni investee, gagayahin natin yon sa ating libro. Kapag mag-i-increase ang net asset or equity ni investee, dapat mag-i-increase din ang investment in associate na account. At kung magdi-decrease naman yung net asset or equity ni associate, dapat may corresponding decrease din sa investment in associate na account sa libro natin as the investor. So basically, under equity method, ginagaya natin yung mga movements sa net assets or equity ni associate. Kung tataas si associate, tataas din tayo. Pero kung bababa naman si associate, bababa rin naman tayo. Pero, yung amount na nire-record syempre natin is only up to the extent of our percentage of ownership. Hindi yung buong change sa net asset ni investee ang nire-record natin. Only our share. So ngayon, let's discuss the exemptions from applying the equity method. So, si investor daw, the entity, may be exempted daw from applying the equity method. So, syempre, may condition yon. So, ano ang condition? Sabi, an entity which is the investor need not apply the equity method to its investment in associate or a joint venture if the entity which is investor daw ay isang parent. Isang parent siya that is exempted from preparing consolidated financial statements. And again, ang isang entity ay matatawag lang na parent if meron siyang subsidiary. At si parent, kaya siya tinawag na parent kasi meron siyang control over the subsidiary. So, ibig sabihin, nagkakaroon lang ng parent-subsidiary relationship kapag ang investor has control over the subsidiary. So, again, yung investor, tayo, na merong tayong investment in associate, which is, tayo ay isang parent din kasi meron tayong investment in subsidiary. So, it means na tayo dito as the investor, hindi lang tayo mayroong investment in an associate. Meron din tayong investment in a subsidiary, kaya nga tayo tinawag na parent. Tapos, tayo as the parent, tayo daw ay exempted from preparing the consolidated financial statements by the scope exception in paragraph 4A of IFRS 10 or PFRS 10. So, exempted tayo from doing the equity method if we complied the exception rules in paragraph 4A of IFRS 10, which is, again, this will be discussed in your advanced accounting, specifically accounting for business combination. So, itong topic na to will not be discussed here in our discussion. O kaya naman daw, or if all of the following apply. So, ibig sabihin, etong apat na requirements na to should be present in order for the entity to be exempted from applying the equity method. So, una, the entity, tayo again, which is the investor, is a wholly owned subsidiary or is a partially owned subsidiary of another entity, and its other owners, including those not otherwise entitled to vote, have been informed about and do not object to the entity not applying the equity method. Tayo daw na entity, which is the investor that has an investment in an associate, tayo ay isang subsidiary, regardless whether tayo ay wholly owned or partially owned. As long as tayo ay isang subsidiary, si investor. So, kung tayo ay isang subsidiary, ibig sabihin meron tayong parent. At yung parent na yon, yun yung entity na may investment naman sa atin. Tapos, yung mga owner daw ng parent natin is not against our decision not to apply the equity method. So, okay lang sa kanila, sa mga owners ng parent natin, na hindi tayo gumamit ng equity method. Tapos, the entity's debt or equity instruments are not traded in a public market. So again, tayo, the entity, yung atin daw either debt or equity instrument ay hindi natin tinitrade sa public market. Ibig sabihin, for example, yung shares of stocks natin ay hindi publicly listed so that the public can purchase ownership. O kaya naman daw, the entity, again tayo to, the investor, did not file nor is it in the process of filing its financial statements with the Securities Commission or other regulatory organization for the purpose of issuing any class of instruments in a public market. So, dito sa second condition, dapat daw ang ating debt or equity instruments must not be traded in a public market. So, dito naman sa third condition, actually, hindi pa talaga publicly traded ang iyong mga securities. Pero dapat, hindi ka rin nag-file o kaya hindi ka in the process of filing para maging publicly traded yung iyong mga securities. Kasi nga, kapag ang iyong mga securities, both debt or equity, ay publicly traded, required kang gumamit ng equity method. And syempre, kung nag-file ka o kaya you are in the process of filing para maging publicly traded, ibig sabihin, dun din papunta yun, magiging publicly traded din yung iyong mga securities. Then, yung last condition for the exemption, the ultimate or intermediate parent daw of the entity, which is again, etong entity na to is tayo, the investor, produces financial statements available for public use that comply with IFRS, in which subsidiaries are consolidated or are measured at fair value through profit or loss in accordance with IFRS 10. So again, dito sa pang-apat na condition, tayo, the investor, which is the entity, we are a subsidiary kasi meron tayong parent, which is either intermediate parent o kaya ultimate parent. Pag sinabi nating ultimate parent, ito yung pinaka nag-umpisa ng lahat. Kumbaga, sa creation ng humankind, siya si Adam o kaya si Eve. And kapag sinabi nating intermediate parent, dito na papasok yung parent ng ating parent. So, kumbaga sa tao, dito papasok yung mga lolo at lola. So again, all of these four conditions must be present for an entity, for an investor, to be exempted from the application of equity method. So, ito ang ating gagamiting problem. So, take a screenshot. So, let us now start answering a problem. So, ang una nating gagawin is yung significant influence acquired through stages. So, pag sinabi nating significant influence acquired through stages, ibig sabihin, initially, our investment in the investee does not give the investor significant influence. So, ibig sabihin, yung investment natin is under IFRS 9, which is either cost model or fair value model. Tapos, subsequent nun, meron tayong additional acquisition of shares. Then, yung additional acquisition ng shares natin, the result of which will give the investor significant influence. So, ganun kapag significant influence that is acquired on stages. So, let's start. On January 1, 2019, ABC Company purchased 20,000 ordinary shares or 10% of DEF Corporation's outstanding ordinary shares for 30 pesos per share. So, dito, on January 1 acquisition 2019, our acquisition only is 10% of the outstanding shares of DEF. So, syempre, ang assumption natin, the default assumption is we can only obtain or exercise significant influence over the investee if our acquisition or ownership is 20% up to 50% of the outstanding shares of the investee. Pero dito, 10% lang. So, ang assumption natin, we cannot exercise significant influence. So, sabi dito, the investment daw is not held for trading and the entity elected to measure the DEF shares at fair value through other comprehensive income. So, the transaction cost paid by DEF company amounted to 10,000 pesos. So, on January 1 daw, ang classification natin for our investment is financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income through election. So, then we have paid a transaction cost amounting to 10,000 pesos. And syempre, since FVOCI ang ating initial classification, the transaction cost will become part of the capitalized asset. Then, ang sabi pa, another paragraph, as of December 31, 2018, DEF Corporation daw has a cash dividends payable of 50,000 pesos to ordinary shareholders of record on February 1, 2019. The cash dividends were distributed on May 31, 2019. Then, the fair value of DEF ordinary shares as of December 31, 2019 is 31 pesos per share. So, ang sabi, nagkaroon tayo ng acquisition on January 1, 2019. At yung ating binayad to acquire the 10% or 20,000 ordinary shares is 30 pesos per share. And that is on January 1, 2019. Yun nga lang, ang sabi niya rito, as of December 31, 2018, si DEF Corporation daw has a cash dividends payable of 50,000 pesos to ordinary shareholders of record on February 1, 2019. So, ibig sabihin, malamang yung date of declaration for this dividend is in 2018, tas ang kanyang date of record is February 1, 2019. Whereas, our acquisition is in between those dates. Kasi ang ating acquisition is on January 1, 2019. So, ano ang ibig sabihin kung ang ating acquisition date is in between the date of declaration and date of record? So, ibig sabihin daw kapag ang ating acquisition, which is yun yung sale of the shares from the previous shareholder papunta sa atin, syempre magbabayad tayo sa kanya upon acquisition, yung pinangbayad daw natin sa kanya is what we call dividends on. So, ano ibig sabihin ng dividends on? Ibig sabihin, kapag tayo ay bumili ng shares between the date of declaration of dividends and date of record, ang binibili natin ay hindi lang yung shares. Kasama sa binibili natin is yung dividends. Ibig sabihin, we are going to purchase 2 items for the price of 1. Ano yung 2 items na yon? Yun yung shares of stocks na pinaka-main investment na bibili natin at kasama yung corresponding dividend entitled to such stock. So, ang question is, bakit may kasakasamang dividendo for every stock na bibilhin mo between date of declaration and date of record? Kasi, ang sabi natin, sabi sa date of declaration, kung sino man daw ang mga shareholders na nasa listahan as of date of record, sila daw yung mga shareholders na makaka-receive ng dividends at date of payment or date of distribution. Kung hindi halimbawang binenta ng old shareholder yung kanyang shares between date of declaration and date of record, ibig sabihin, yung old shareholder will still remain as a shareholder at date of record. So, magiging shareholder pa rin siya, magiging part pa rin siya ng list of shareholders as of date of record. So, makaka-receive siya ng dividendo at date of payment or distribution. At tama lang naman talaga na ma-receive niya yon kasi entitled siya doon. Yung dividendo na yon is result of investing her capital. Kasi nga babae ito, di ba? Kaso, ang problema natin is binenta niya in between date of declaration and date of record, which means at date of sale, nagkaroon na ng transfer of ownership on the stocks. So, from the old shareholder, malilipat na siya to the new shareholder. So, bibili ng new shareholder yung investments from the old shareholder. So, pagdating ng date of record, hindi na mapapasama yung old shareholders sa list ng shareholders at date of record. Sino na yung maisasama sa listahan? Siyempre, ang masasama na sa listahan is yung bagong shareholder, yung bagong may-ari. At since kasama na siya dito sa listahan as of date of record, yung bagong shareholder, siya yung makaka-receive ng dividendo at date of payment or date of distribution. Pero ang question is, tama ba na siya yung maka-receive ng dividendo at date of payment just because yung pangalan ng new shareholder is included in the date of record? Siyempre, dapat hindi. Hindi siya dapat entitled dun sa dividendo na ipamimigay at date of payment. Hindi porket kasama na siya sa listahan as of date of record. Bakit? Siyempre kasi hindi pa naman siya investor as of date of declaration or bago mag-date of declaration. Siyempre kaya naman nagkaroon ng dividendo kasi nagkaroon ng net income. And yung net income na yun, siyempre na-generate natin yon dahil dun sa paggamit ng capital ng corporation. Siyempre, kaninong investment yung part ng capital ng corporation as of date of declaration. Siyempre, yung lumang shareholder. So, yung investment ng lumang shareholder, part yun ng capital na ginamit ng corporation to generate the net income, which is the source of dividend, di ba? So, ibig sabihin, ang entitled doon sa dividendo na yun ay yung lumang shareholder. Siya talaga ang dapat na makareceive ng dividendo na yun. Yun nga lang, hindi na siya kasama sa listahan ng shareholder as of date of record. Kaya, anong mangyayari kung siya yung entitled doon sa dividendo na yun, pero ang masasama sa listahan ng shareholder as of date of record is yung bagong shareholders. Kasi nga, nagkaroon ng sale or acquisition ng shares of stocks in between date of declaration and date of record. So, ang gagawin natin para ma-receive pa rin ng lumang shareholder yung dividendo na supposedly marireceive dapat niya dito sa date of payment or date of distribution, ang mangyari is ang fair value na ibabayad ng new shareholder to acquire the shares is yung fair value ng shares of stocks plus yung dividends na marireceive dapat ng lumang shareholder at date of distribution or at date of payment. Kaya ang tawag natin dito sa fair value or market value ng ating shares of stocks between date of declaration and date of record is dividends on. Kasi kapag binili mo yung shares of stocks, kasama mong binibili yung dividendo na marireceive at date of payment. So, ang marireceive ng old shareholder is fair value ng shares of stocks for the price of 2, which is yung price for the shares of stocks at yung dividendo. So, ibig sabihin, yung old shareholder, kapag binenta niya yung shares of stocks, in between these two dates, marireceive na niya yung dividendo by including the dividend in the payment to be made by the new shareholders. Kaya ang tawag natin is dividends on kasi kasama dito yung dividendo na marireceive at date of payment. Tapos, dahil ang magiging part na ng list of shareholders as of date of record is si bagong shareholder, so yung bagong shareholder ang makaka-receive na ng dividendo at date of payment. So for example, nagkaroon ng declaration na 5 pesos per share. Tapos, ang sabi niya rito, binenta daw ng old shareholder yung shares of stocks sa new shareholder. Tapos, ang binayad ng new shareholder is 55 pesos, which is dividends on, which includes the dividend of 5 pesos per share. Kaya pagdating ng date of declaration, kapag payment na ng dividendo, ang makaka-receive na ng 5 pesos per share is yung bagong shareholder kasi nga, siya na yung shareholder as part of the stock registry as of date of record. Kaya kung papansinin nyo, in effect, kapag nakatanggap yung bagong shareholder dito ng dividendo na 5 pesos per share, in effect, wala talaga siyang na-receive na dividendo. Bakit? Kasi yung dividendo na 5 pesos, binigay na ni new shareholder dun sa lumang shareholder. Kasi nga, dividends on. Kasama na yung dividendo dito sa fair value na 55 pesos, which is yung 5 pesos kasama rito. Tapos, marireceive niya rin yung 5 pesos pagdating ng date of distribution. So, nagkaroon siya ng outflow at date of acquisition. Tapos, nagkaroon siya ng inflow na 5 pesos at date of distribution ng dividend. So, ibig sabihin, nagkaroon ng inflow at outflow na 5 pesos. So, zero net effect yun. Kaya, in effect, sa point of view ng new shareholder, wala siya talagang na-receive na dividendo. At in-acquire pa rin niya yung shares of stocks at a price of 50 pesos. Kasi nga yung 5 pesos na part ng 55 pesos, nabawi niya rin nung nag-distribute na yung corporation ng dividendo. Kaso, what if kung yung old shareholder binenta niya yung shares of stocks between date of record and date of payment? So, syempre, magbabayad yung new shareholder. So, magkano yung, anong tawag doon sa ibabayad ni shareholder? Syempre, yun yung fair value that is already an ex-dividend. Pag sinabi naman nating ex-dividend, ibig sabihin nito, yung binibili ng new shareholder between these dates is yung shares of stocks lang. Walang kasamang dividendo. Unlike dito sa date of declaration tsaka date of record, between these dates, dalawa ang binibili ng new shareholder. May shares of stocks at may dividendo. Pero kapag between date of record and date of payment or distribution, isa na lang item ang binibili ng new shareholder, which is yung mismong shares of stocks. Hindi kasamang binibenta rito ang dividendo. Bakit hindi kasama yung dividendo na binibenta kapag between date of record and date of payment? Kasi kung dito binenta ng old shareholder yung shares of stocks, ibig sabihin as of date of record, yung pangalan ng old shareholder is still included in the list of shareholders that will receive the dividend as of date of payment or date of distribution. Kaya, kapag binenta yung shares as of date of record or date of payment, kahit hindi na si old shareholder yung may-ari ng mga shares as of date of payment or date of distribution, siya pa rin ang makaka-receive ng dividendo na 5 pesos per share. Bakit? Kasi si old shareholder is part pa rin siya ng mga shareholders na nasa listahan as of date of record. At kailan lang siya natanggal sa list of shareholders? After na yon ng date of record. Then after nung sale na yon, syempre ang shareholder na is yung new shareholder. Pero yung new shareholder, hindi siya makaka-receive ng dividendo as of date of payment. Kasi nga, etong new shareholder, naging shareholder lang siya after date of record. At yung shareholder natin as of the date of record is still the old shareholder. Kaya siya yung makaka-receive ng dividendo as of date of payment or date of distribution. Kaya dito, ang fair value ng shares of stocks ex-dividend is commonly lower than the fair value of the stocks dividends on. Kasi nga dito, ang fair value ng shares of stocks includes the dividend. Pero dito, walang kasama for the dividend. Shares of stocks lang talaga ang fair value na to. So kaya, in this scenario, dito sa example na to, ang difference ng dividends on na fair value at ex-dividends na fair value is yung dividends na 5 pesos. Assuming na yung fair value pertaining to the shares of stocks alone is 50 pesos from date of declaration until date of payment. Kung ang fair value of the shares of stocks alone is 50 pesos. Kaya naging 55 lang to kasi we added the 5 peso dividend. So, syempre, ganun dapat yung assumption. Pero, syempre, yung fair value ng stocks, nagpa-fluctuate yan. Not necessarily, 50 pesos din dito yung fair value ng shares of stocks alone. Pwedeng mag-iba yun, di ba? Pero for this scenario, assuming na 50 pesos ang fair value ng stocks alone from date of declaration until date of payment, ang difference nila dito is just the dividend of 5 pesos. Kasi dito, between date of declaration and date of record, may kasamang dividends, kaya dividends on. Pero pag between date of record and date of payment, wala na siyang kasamang dividend, kaya ang tawag is ex-dividend. So, ngayon, let's start the journal entry. So, again, ang ating date of acquisition is January 1, 2019, which is between the date of declaration and between the date of record. Ang assumption natin, the date of declaration is in 2018 kasi nga as of December 31, 2018, meron ng dividends payable si DEF Corporation. Tapos ang date of record natin is February 1. So by February 1, ang magiging shareholder of record na is tayo. Pero syempre, hindi tayo entitled sa dividend na yun. Ang entitled talaga doon sa dividend na yun is yung lumang shareholder. Kaya yung part ng binayad nating cash is yung dividendo. Kasama nating ibibigay sa old shareholder yung dividendo na entitled siyang ma-receive. So magkano natin binili yung shares of stocks? So ang bili natin on January 1, 2019 is 30 pesos per share, which means itong 30 pesos na to ay dividends on. May kasama tong dividendo. At magkano yung dividendo na yon? Ang sabi niya rito, ang total cash dividends payable ni DEF Corporation as of December 31, 2018 is 50,000 pesos. So kung 50,000 pesos at ang binili nating shares is 10%, so 10% ng 50,000, yun yung dividends na kasamang ibabayad doon sa lumang shareholder. Kaya ang journal entry natin will include credit cash for 20,000 ordinary shares. Kasi yun yung binili nating ordinary shares, 20,000 times 30 pesos. That is 600,000 pesos. Then, tayo ay magde-debit ng dividends receivable for 5,000 pesos. So, yung 5,000 pesos, hindi ito magiging part ng ating investment, yung financial asset at FBOCI. Kasi nga, itong 5,000 pesos na to pertains to dividends. Tapos, Yung dividend na yan, kaya yan naka-dividend receivable on January 1, 2019 kasi tayo na nga yung magiging shareholders of record on February 1. At tayo yung makaka-receive ng 5,000 pesos at date of payment. Kaya kapag dumating na yung date of payment, ang babayaran na ng 5,000 pesos dividends ay tayo na. So, isasara lang natin yung dividends receivable na yan. Pero, never natin yung i-record as dividend income. Kasi, sino nag-record ng 5,000 na yan na dividend as a dividend income? Siyempre, yung lumang shareholder. At kailan ba nire-record ang dividend income? Siyempre, nire-record ang dividend income kung kailan may right na yung shareholder to receive the dividend. And that is on date of declaration. So, ang nakapag-record na ng dividend income for the 5,000 pesos is yung lumang shareholder. At since na-record nyo yun as dividend income, ibig sabihin siya talaga yung entitled sa dividend na to at hindi tayo yung entitled sa dividend na yan. Kaya hindi natin yan i-record as dividend income. Kaya yung dividend receivable na yan, masasara din yan at date of payment. So magkano talaga yung financial asset in equity investment natin? So yan ay 595,000 pesos. Tapos, ang ating account title na ginamit is Financial Asset at Fair Value Through Other Comprehensive Income. Tapos, aside doon, on January 1, 2019, same date, meron din tayong binayad. Ano daw? Transaction cost ng 10,000 pesos. And since ito ay hindi FVPL, so yung transaction cost natin will be recorded as part of the acquisition cost. So, yung 10,000 pesos will be capitalized or added to the cost of the investment. So, debit tayo ng asset account which is financial asset at FVOCI for 10,000 pesos, then credit cash 10,000 pesos. Tapos, ang sabi niya dito, the cash dividends were distributed on May 31, 2019. So, sa May 31, 2019, sino na makaka-receive ng 5,000 pesos? Siyempre tayo na. Kasi nga tayo ay shareholders of record ng February 1, 2019. So, makaka-receive tayo ng cash. So, debit cash tayo upon receipt for 5,000 pesos. Then, credit tayo, dividends receivable, 5,000 pesos. So, kung titingnan nyo, ni-reverse lang natin yung dividends receivable natin dito. And net effect nyan is hindi talaga tayo nakareceive any ng dividend. Kasi, nilabas lang natin yung 5 pesos on January 1, tapos pumasok ulit siya nung March 31, di ba? Kasi nga, hindi natin yan dividend income. Dividend income yan nung old shareholder. Kasi, nagkaroon ng right yung old shareholder to receive this dividend on date of declaration. Then, ang next journal entry natin, syempre, since this is a fair value through other comprehensive income, is on December 31, 2019. At anong gagawin natin kapag year-end? Ang sabi natin, under fair value model, ang ating financial asset should be measured at the fair value at the reporting date. So, magkano yung fair value ng ating equity investment as of the year end for 2019. Ang sabi niya rito, ang fair value ng DEF ordinary shares is 31 pesos per share. So, kailangan nating i-remeasure yung ating financial asset at FVOCI. So, let's start with the unadjusted balance. Magkano yung unadjusted balance? So, based sa ating journal entries on January 1, 2019, ang ating financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income is recorded at 605,000 pesos. And that is yung 595 plus 10,000 pesos. Pero syempre, we need to remeasure this at fair value at year-end. So, magkano yung adjusted balance niya that should appear in the statement of financial position? So, that is 620,000 pesos, which is computed as 20,000 ordinary shares multiplied by the fair value per share at year-end. So, 620,000 pesos. So, magkano ang difference ng dalawa? So, ang difference ng dalawa is 15,000 pesos. So, increase yan from 605, dapat maging 620,000 siya. So, ibig sabihin, ang difference nila is an unrealized gain from fair value change. So, gain yan kasi nga nag-increase. So, kailangan natin tong i-recognize. So, how do we record this at year-end? So, ang journal entry natin on December 31, 2019 is debit tayo ng financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income for 15,000 pesos. So, debit yan kasi we need to increase the asset account by 15,000 pesos. Then, credit tayo ng gain, which is unrealized gain in OCI. And that is 15,000 pesos as well. And again, itong gain na to will not be part of the net income computation. This will be presented below the net income, which is part of the comprehensive income. So, ano ang magiging itsura ng ating financial statements as of December 31, 2019? So, sa statement of comprehensive income, ang tangi nating makikita is yung unrealized gain in OCI na 15,000 pesos. At ito yung nirecord natin on December 31, 2019. So, yan lang ating ilalagay dyan. Tapos, sa ating statement of financial position, ang ating financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income is 620,000 pesos based on its market value at year-end. At syempre, dun siya sa non-current asset section. Tapos, magkakaroon din tayo sa shareholders equity section na 15,000 pesos. Yan yung cumulative other comprehensive income na galing sa fair value change on December 31, 2019. At syempre, kaya yan napunta sa shareholders equity kasi nagmula muna yan dito sa statement of comprehensive income. Kasi nga, itong OCI na to is kino-close sa cumulative other comprehensive income which has a special place in the shareholders equity section. So, ngayon, let's proceed to the next year. So, 2020. So, ang sabi rito, on April 1, 2020, ABC Company purchased additional 15% of DEF Corporation outstanding ordinary shares at fair value of 30 pesos per share. Then, transaction costs paid amounted to 20,000 pesos. So, on January 1, 2020, the shareholders' equity of DEF Corporation is shown below. So, ngayon, on April 1, 2020, what happened is we have an additional investment in the same investee kay DEF Company. So, initially, in 2019, our ownership is 10%. So, below 20% yon, di ba? For us to gain significant influence. Pero dito, on April 1, 2020, meron tayong additional 15. Ibig sabihin, as of April 1, 2020, right after our acquisition, yung total percentage of ownership na natin, ABC Company, in DEF's ordinary shares is now at 25%. So, 25% ng ownership natin. So, we can assume na si ABC Company, given this information, ABC Company can exercise significant influence. At since significant influence is already present in ABC Company, so yung ating investment must now be accounted for under the equity method. So, kailangan na siyang i-revise. So, i-reclassify natin siya from fair value through other comprehensive income into investment in associate. And syempre, anong ginagawa kapag nagkakaroon ng reclassification? So, kapag ang ating financial asset is an equity instrument, allowed ba tayo na mag-reclassify? Oo, syempre, allowed naman tayo mag-reclassify. Except for reclassification from FVPL papuntang FVOCI or from FVOCI papuntang FVPL. Kasi nga, kapag ang isang shares of stocks ay may quoted price, ibig sabihin, tayo ay dapat mag-fair value model. Bawal tayong mag-cost model kapag may fair value ang shares of stocks. At ang classification dapat natin initially should be FVPL, di ba? We can only use FVOCI upon election. At once we elected to apply or to use FVOCI as our classification or measurement basis, ibig sabihin, irrevocable na yon, hindi na pwedeng baguhin. Kaya, yung reclassification from and to FVPL and FVOCI ay bawal ng standard. Pero, once na nagkaroon tayo ng significant influence, ibang usapan na yon. Pwede ka mag-reclassify from FVPL papuntang associate, or from FVOCI papuntang associate, or from cost model papuntang investment in associate. As long as yung increase in the percentage of ownership will result for the investor to exercise significant influence. So, allowed naman tayo mag-reclassify dahil nagkaroon tayo ng significant influence. Siyempre, kailangan na natin siyang i-account under the equity method. So, ano ang dapat natin gawin at date of reclassification? Yung date of reclassification natin is yung date we obtained significant influence, and that is on April 1, 2020. Kasi doon tayo bumili ng additional 15%. So, our assumption, starting on that date, we can now exercise significant influence over the investee. So, ano gagawin natin sa April 1, 2020? So, dapat daw yung previously owned shares, which is yung 10% natin, must be remeasured again at fair value on April 1, 2020. Kaya, on April 1, 2020, yung previously owned shares natin na 10% must first be remeasured at fair value. Fair value niya on April 1, 2020. So, ngayon, April 1, 2020, ang unahin natin is i-remeasure muna natin yung 10% which is yung previously owned shares natin kay DEF Corporation. So, syempre, on December 31, 2019, ang kanyang carrying value is 620,000 pesos. Syempre, yung 620,000 pesos na yan yung fair value ng ating shares of stocks ni DEF on December 31, 2019, which is 20,000 ordinary shares. Tapos, syempre, sabi, kailangan daw yung i-remeasure on April 1, 2020. So, ito yung date of reclassification kasi natin from financial asset at FVOCI papuntang investment associate under the equity method. So, magkano yung kanyang fair value? So, yung kanyang fair value, which must be the adjusted balance, is based on the fair value on April 1, 2020. At magkano daw yun? 30 pesos per share. So, magkano yan? So, 20,000, yun yung previously owned shares, which is equal to 10% of the outstanding shares. So, 20,000 shares times 30 pesos per share, that is 600,000 pesos. So, from 620 daw, dapat gawin siyang 600,000 pesos. So, may difference siya. Magkano yung kanyang difference? So, ang kanyang difference is 20,000 pesos, which is negative. So, kung negative yan ay isang loss. So, unrealized loss from fair value change of a financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income. So, ngayon, entradahan muna natin yan. From 620, gawin natin siyang 600,000 pesos. So, ang entrada natin would be debit, unrealized gain or loss from change in FVOCI. Siyempre, yan ay loss kasi debit yan na 20,000 pesos. Then, credit tayo ng financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income na 20,000 pesos para mabawasan siya at siya ay maging 600,000 pesos. So, ngayon, after niyang entrada na yan, ang ating financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income, which is yung ating previously owned shares, has now a balance of 600,000 pesos, which is equal to the fair value on April 1, 2020. So ngayon, dahil naka-fair value na siya, pwede na nating i-record yung acquisition natin ng additional 15%. So ang entrada natin dyan would be, credit tayo ng cash for 900,000 pesos. So, saan galing yung 900,000 pesos na yan? So, yan ay 200,000 times 15% times 30. So, saan ang galing 200,000? So, ito yung number of shares outstanding ni DEF Corporation. So, saan galing yan? So, kung titingnan nyo rito, ang sabi niya rito, meron tayong 3,075,000 pesos na ordinary share capital at 15 pesos per share daw siya. Ibig sabihin, kung 3,075,000 divided by 15 pesos par value per share, ang sagot doon is 205,000 shares. So again, 205,000 shares ang sagot kapag dinivide mo ang 3,075,000 sa 15 pesos par value. So ano yung 205,000 shares? Yun yung kanyang issued ordinary shares. Ang question, yung 205,000 shares ba ay outstanding? So, hindi outstanding lahat yon. Bakit? Kasi meron tayo ditong treasury shares. Ilan ang treasury shares daw natin? 5,000 shares. So, kung ang issued natin is 205,000 shares at merong 5,000 shares na nasa treasury, ibig sabihin, ang total outstanding shares ni DEF Corporation is 200,000 shares. Kaya ito yung basis natin ng 15% additional acquisition of shares of stocks. Kaya ang formula natin is 200,000 shares times 0.15 times 30 pesos, which is the fair value per share on this date. Para lang doon sa 15%. Then, ang next natin is ika-credit na natin yung previously held interest natin, which is yung financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income, which is for the 10%. So, eto ngayon ay may amount na 600,000 pesos after we have recognized the change in the fair value. So, i-credit natin yon 600,000 pesos. Kaya, after nyan, may i-reclassify na natin siya into investment in associate. Kaya ang ating debit is investment in associate for 1.5 million pesos. At paano na-compute yan? Yan ay 50,000 shares multiplied by 30 pesos. So, saan galing yung 50,000 shares? Yan ngayon yung total shares held natin, which is equal to the 25% of DEF's outstanding ordinary shares. Ang outstanding ordinary shares ni DEF ay 200,000 shares at ang 25% nun is 50,000 shares at syempre yung 30 pesos, fair value yon on April 1, 2020. Tapos, on April 1 daw, 2020, same date, we have also paid 20,000 pesos daw na transaction cost. So, babayaran din natin yan. So, debit tayo ng investment in associate, 20,000 pesos, then credit cash, 20,000 pesos. Kasi, ang transaction cost natin na to is to be capitalized. Kasi, hindi naman tayo FVPL. Tayo ay under equity method. Then, after nun, meron pa tayong isang gagawin. Ano yung gagawin natin na yun? Kung natatandaan nyo, yung ating previously held interest ay isang financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income. At alam natin na yung changes in the fair value ng isang FVOCI ay nire-record sa OCI, which is yung OCI na makikita sa shareholders equity section natin, which is separated from the retained earnings. So since hindi na financial asset at fair value through OCI yung ating investment kay DEF as of April 1, 2020, dapat matanggal na rin yung OCI sa shareholders equity na related doon sa investment natin kay DEF. Kasi nga, hindi na siya FVOCI. Investment in associate na siya. So, tatanggalin mo ngayon yun. Paano mo ngayon yun tatanggalin? So, ang sabi dito, kapag nagkaroon daw tayo ng acquisition of additional shares at yung acquisition of additional shares will cause the investor to obtain significant influence, yung difference daw between fair value and carrying value ng previously held interest will be accounted as follows. So, since FVOCI tayo, yung ating change daw in the fair value should be recognized directly in retained earnings. Pero kanina, ang ginawa natin is nirecord ko muna siya sa OCI. Tapos, ang gagawin natin, lahat ng nasa OCI, isasara natin diretso sa retained earnings. Kasama na rin yung OCI na nirecord natin on April 1. Lahat yon must be close to the retained earnings. Pero kung halimbawa daw yung previously held interest mo ay either FVPL or naka-cost model ka, any changes daw between the fair value and carrying value will be recorded in P&L, which is part of the net income computation. So, ano ang ating entrada? So, ang ating entrada would be credit unrealized gain or loss from change in fair value in other comprehensive income. So, yan ay credit na 5,000 pesos. So, naka-credit siya kasi nga ang balance ng ating other comprehensive income or loss is debit balance kasi loss yun, di ba? So, may debit balance siya. So, isasara natin kaya credit to. And para isara yung debit balance ng ating OCI or OCL, so, i-debit ngayon natin yung retained earnings for 5,000 pesos. So, kaya kapag ang ating financial asset in equity instrument is in FVOCI, so, hindi tayo nagre-recognize talaga ng gain or loss na makikita sa P&L. Kasi nga, hindi nire-recycle ang OCI kapag equity investments. So, after we have recorded the initial recognition of our investment in associate, tapos yung previously held interest natin was already reclassified. So, meron pang additional procedure to be performed at initial recognition. So, ano yun? So, sabi rito sa paragraph 10, so ito yung ginawa natin. On initial recognition, the investment in an associate or a joint venture is recognized at cost, which is yung ating cost ay based doon sa binayad natin for the additional 15%. Then, for the previously held interest, yung cost ng previously held interest is attributable to the fair value nung previously held interest at date of reclassification. So, yun yung cost pertaining to the previously held interest, yung fair value. But for the additional shares purchased, ang cost natin syempre is yung binayad natin, yung consideration paid to acquire the additional 15% share. So, meron pang additional procedure at ito yon, which is also performed during initial recognition. So, according to paragraph 32, an investment is accounted for using the equity method from the date on which it becomes an associate or a joint venture. So, on April 1, 2020, since yung ating investment is now considered as an investment in associate kasi meron na tayong significant influence, ang accounting treatment now natin, starting that date, is equity method. So yung first procedure under equity method is, on acquisition of the investment, any difference between the cost of the investment and the entity's share of the net fair value of the investee's identifiable assets and liabilities is accounted for as follows. So una, goodwill relating to an associate or a joint venture is included in the carrying amount of the investment. Then the amortization of that goodwill is not permitted. Then letter B, any excess of the entity's share of the net fair value of the investee's identifiable assets and liabilities over the cost of the investment is included as income in the determination of the entity's share of the associate or joint venture's profit or loss in the period in which the investment is acquired. So, ngayon, ano ba ibig sabihin ng paragraph 32? So, basically, yung paragraph 32, ang gusto niyang pagawa sa atin is to i-assess or i-compare yung ating cost, yung pinangbayad natin, at i-compare yon sa binili natin. So, ano ba yung binili natin? Siyempre, yung binili natin is yung ownership sa company. And siyempre, kapag tayo ay may ownership sa company, basically, mayroon tayong ownership din siyempre sa net assets ni investee. So, yun yung tinutukoy natin na binili natin, siyempre. So, first, dun muna tayo mag-focus sa pinangbayad natin. And again, yung pinangbayad natin is what we call our cost or consideration. So, ano ba yung composition ng ating cost or consideration? So, ang composition niyan is the fair value of the previously held interest. So, in our case, dahil tayo ay nagkaroon ng significant influence in stages, so meron na tayong previously held interest. So, yung cost niya will be equal to the fair value ng previously held interest at date of reclassification, the date when we obtained significant influence. Tapos, syempre, part din ng cost or consideration is yung mismong consideration na to acquire the new shares. Yung acquisition ng new shares, yun yung nag-lead para magkaroon tayo ng significant influence. And yung amount that will become part of the cost, syempre, yung consideration. Kaya, ito yung ating composition ng ating cost. Siyempre, dagdag mo na rin dyan yung transaction cost in case na meron transaction cost. Kasi ito ay investment in associate. So ngayon, itong cost or consideration, yan yung iyong investment, di ba? To acquire ownership. Ownership, siyempre, doon sa investee. So kung meron kang ownership sa investee, ibig sabihin, may ownership ka sa kanilang net assets. So basically, syempre, kung meron kang ownership sa isang business, so meron ka ring ownership sa kanilang net assets. Pero syempre, only up to the extent of your percentage of ownership. In our case, sa problem na sinasagutan natin, ang ating ownership is 25%. Tapos, kung magsaset ka ng value dun sa identifiable net assets ni investee, dapat daw based siya sa fair value. So, dapat daw naka-fair value. So, syempre, familiar naman na kayo sa fair value. However, what do we mean by identifiable net assets? So, when we say identifiable net assets, ibig sabihin nito, ito yung mga assets less liabilities ni investee, which includes, pagdating sa assets, kasama dyan yung tangible and intangible assets. Pero, when it comes to intangible assets, hindi kasama dun yung goodwill. So, in case na may goodwill si investee, hindi yun kasama dito sa tinutukoy nating identifiable net assets na kailangan nating malaman yung fair value. So, ibig sabihin, ang composition lang ng identifiable net assets is, for the assets, yan ay tangible and intangible assets excluding the goodwill recorded in the books of the investee. Tapos, syempre, since ito ay net assets, less liabilities. Then, it should be measured at fair value. So ngayon, ang gustong pagawa ni paragraph 32 is, kailangan mo daw i-compare yung pinangbayad mo or yung iyong investment, which is the cost, i-compare mo daw ito dito sa iyong binili, which is yung ownership dito sa identifiable net assets ni investee or ni associate. So may mga instances na itong cost ay equal dito sa fair value ng identifiable net assets. So kapag ganoon, wala tayong problema. So magkakaroon lang tayo ng additional procedure kapag magkaiba sila. So pag magkaiba ang cost at fair value of identifiable net assets, pwedeng etong cost, yung investment mo, mas malaki dun sa fair value ng binili mo, which is yung identifiable net assets. O kaya naman may mga instances na mas mababa naman itong investment mo kaysa doon sa binili mo, which is again yung identifiable net asset. So kapag may differences yung cost at fair value ng identifiable net assets, yun yung tinutukoy na letter A and letter B sa paragraph 32, which is yung either goodwill o kaya naman negative goodwill. So kung babalikan natin yung paragraph 32, ang sabi niya rito, kapag ang cost is mas malaki doon sa fair value of the identifiable net assets na binili mo, ang difference nila pertains to goodwill. Pero kapag ang cost is mas maliit kaysa doon sa binili mo, which is yung fair value of identifiable net assets, ang tawag naman doon is negative goodwill. At yun naman yung letter B. So, ano ibig sabihin ng goodwill? Bakit nagkakaroon ng goodwill? So, kapag ang cost mo o yung pinangbayad mo ay mas malaki doon sa binili mo, which is the fair value of identifiable net assets, ibig sabihin, aside dito sa mismong identifiable net assets, meron ka ring binayarang iba, which pertains to the goodwill. So, ano yung binabayaran mong iba pertaining to goodwill? Saan galing yung goodwill? Yung goodwill, nanggagaling to sa mga factors na hindi makikita sa identifiable net assets ni investee or ni associate. So, ibig sabihin, hindi lang naman talaga ownership sa identifiable net assets ni associate yung binibili mo, yung magkakaroon ka. Aside doon, so magkakaroon ka din ng ownership doon sa mga attributes ng associate na again, hindi mo makikita sa identifiable net assets niya. At ano yung mga yon? So, kasama na doon yung experience ni associate when it comes to its business, yung kanyang standing sa industry nila. Siya ba ay yung leading business in its industry? Or ano yung standing niya as compared to its competitors? So, lagi ba siyang ahead sa kanyang mga competitors? Pagdating naman sa mga innovation, siya rin ba ay laging ahead as compared to its competitors? O kaya naman, ano yung ability ni associate to generate income? Maganda ba? Kasama din doon yung maganda ba yung reputasyon ni associate? So, yun yung mga factors, mga attributes ni associate na mapapakinabangan mo kapag nagkaroon ka ng ownership sa kanya. So, not necessarily talaga ang binibili mo is identifiable net assets. Hindi lang naman kasi yan yung kapakipakinabang from the associate. So, aside dyan sa identifiable net assets na yan, so yun din yung mga other factors na mabibigay ni associate sa iyo. At kasama yun sa binabayaran mo. At yun yung attributable to the goodwill. So, kaya nga siya tinawag na goodwill eh. Normally, this pertains to the positive attributes of the investee or the associate. Pero kung mas maliit naman yung pinangbayad mo kaysa dito sa binili mo na identifiable net assets, so ibig sabihin, parang ang dating medyo mas mababa yung bili mo sa kanya, di ba? To acquire that ownership. So, parang ang dating ay nakamura ka. So, yung difference nila, which is yung parang sa tingin mo ay savings, that is what we call a negative goodwill. So, ano naman yung nagkukos ng negative goodwill? Pwedeng yung cause ng negative goodwill is yung mga factors opposite sa goodwill. Possible yun. Kasi syempre, alam naman natin, yung mga attributes ng isang business, it has an effect on its value, di ba? Kung halimbawa, kung hindi maganda yung reputasyon ng business, kung hindi siya maalaga sa kanyang mga empleyado. So, may effect yon sa value ng isang business. Pwedeng mapababa niya yung halaga ng isang business. Pero, meron ding mga instances na yung negative goodwill, hindi ganon yung cause. Kasi pwedeng magkaroon ng negative goodwill kung halimbawa, yung acquisition is a rush acquisition or rush sale. Mabilisan or madalian yung pagbenta ng ownership. Bakit? Kasi yung nagbenta ng ownership is in need of funds. 'Di ba kapag ikaw ay nangangailangan ng funds, minsan para lang makapag-acquire ka na agad ng funds, ibebenta mo na siya kahit sa mababang halaga. So, parang i-ignore mo na yung possibility na malugi ka kahit onte. So, i-accept mo na yung lugi basta mabenta mo lang siya kasi nga nangangailangan ka na agad ng pondo. So, isa din yung rason kung bakit pwedeng magkaroon ng negative goodwill na yung cost is mas mababa doon sa fair value ng identifiable net assets. So, ito yung gustong pagawa sa'yo ni paragraph 32. Kailangan mo i-compare yung cost at fair value ng identifiable net assets para malaman natin kung meron ka bang goodwill or negative goodwill. So ngayon, dito naman tayo mag-focus sa fair value of identifiable net assets. Etong identifiable net assets na to, sabi natin, it should be measured at fair value. Fair value on what date? Kasi nga, ang fair value, nag-iiba-iba yan on each date. So, anong specific date should we determine the fair value of the identifiable net assets? So, yan ay dapat ma-identify on the date you obtained significant influence, which in our problem, we obtained significant influence on April 1, 2020. So, ang problema lang natin dito sa identifiable net assets ni associate is that hindi naman nakarecord itong mga identifiable net assets sa libro ni associate at fair value. Nakarecord yan sa libro ni associate at book value. So, may possibility na yung fair value of the identifiable net assets will not equal the book value. So, possible na may mga ganong instances. Pero may mga instances din na ang book value is also equal to the fair value. Especially kung yung item of asset is measured at fair value every reporting date, di ba? Pero kung hindi naman, so may mga instances na magkaiba ang fair value at book value at the date we obtained significant influence. So kapag kaganon, kapag may difference, you also need to identify the difference between the fair value and the book value of the identifiable net assets. At yung difference na yon, ang tawag natin doon is either under or overvaluation. So pag sinabi nating overvaluation, ibig sabihin, mas malaki yung nasa books ni associate compared doon sa fair value. Then kapag sinabi naman nating undervaluation or undervalued ang isang item of asset or liability, it means mas mababa naman yung amount na nasa libro, which is the book value, as compared to its fair value. So ngayon, etong dalawang to, yung total nitong dalawang to, ito yung tinatawag nating excess of cost over the book value. Again, etong dalawang to is the excess of cost over book value. So, ano ang ibig sabihin nun? So, mamaya malalaman natin kapag in-apply natin tong analysis or assessment under paragraph 32 dito sa ating problem. So, gawin na natin yon. So, ngayon, gawin natin yung pinapagawa ng paragraph 32. So, i-compare natin yung cost ng ating investment. Again, yung cost ng investment natin pertains to the 25% investment in associate. Kasama na yung previously held interest. Tapos i-compare natin yun sa fair value ng ating identifiable net assets. So since meron na tayong cost computation, yun yung amount we have recorded initially yung ating investment in associate na account. So since meron tayong cost, ang next nating i-identify is yung fair value ng ating identifiable net assets ni associate. Again, yung identifiable net assets ni associate should be measured at fair value. Fair value ng anong petsa? April 1, 2020. So, paano natin malaman yung fair value ng identifiable net assets ni associate on this date, April 1, 2020, the date we obtained significant influence? So, para malaman natin yun, so, syempre, kailangan natin ng information about the fair value ng assets at fair value ng liabilities ni associate on this date. Pero kung titingnan mo, wala naman tayong information about the assets and liabilities of the associate, yung complete assets and liabilities on April 1, 2020. Pero syempre, alam naman natin na kapag sinabing net asset, yun yung excess ng assets over liabilities, di ba? Which is also equal to the equity. Syempre, pag sinabing equity, since si DEF Corporation ng associate ay isang corporation, so yung equity niya is the shareholders' equity. At based sa ating information, meron tayong information about the shareholders' equity ni associate. At magkano ang kanyang shareholders' equity? Siya ay 5,755,000 pesos. So, ibig sabihin, ito yung difference ng assets and liabilities ni associate. Yun nga lang, ito ay dated January 1, 2020. Di ba ang kailangan natin is yung difference ng assets and liabilities on April 1, 2020. So since meron man tayo ditong net assets, which is the shareholders equity, yun nga lang January 1, 2020. So kung titingnan natin, meron tayo ditong shareholders equity ni associate. At yun ay 5,755,000 pesos. So syempre, ito yung net assets ni associate. Yun nga lang, ang date is January 1, 2020. Di ba ang kailangan natin is the net assets on April 1, 2020, which is also the shareholders equity of the associate. Yun nga lang, April 1, 2020. So since ang available data lang is shareholders equity on January 1, ang question is, kaya ba nating makompute yung shareholders equity ni associate on April 1 gamit itong information na to? So, syempre, kaya naman nating makompute yun. Ang gagawin natin, syempre, is starting this value, 5,755,000, kailangan lang nating i-consider yung transactions from January 1 until April 1 na may effect sa shareholders equity ni associate during the 3-month period, January 1 to April 1. At ano ba yung mga possible transactions na nangyari from January to April 1, 2020 na may effect sa shareholders equity? So, ang most common transaction is na pwedeng mangyari is, syempre, yung net income or comprehensive income ng associate. At kung meron man siyang dineclare na dividend during the 3-month period. So, i-check natin. So, kung titingnan natin dito sa information na to, meron tayo ditong statement of comprehensive income ni associate for the year 2020 and 2021. Syempre, ang kailangan lang natin is year 2020. Kasi we only need to determine the change in the equity of the associate from January 1 to April 1. So, dito lang titingnan natin etong statement of comprehensive income for 2020. So, meron siya ritong 208,000 comprehensive income. So, kung babasahin natin, meron ditong cash dividends na dineclare pero December 1. So, ibig sabihin, hindi ito during the January to April 1 period. So, yung dividend, walang effect sa ating computation. Kasi nga, yung declaration is on December 1. Siyempre, hindi mo papansin yung date of record and date of payment when identifying if there is an effect on equity. Kasi ang dividendo, nagkakaroon lang siya ng effect sa shareholders equity at date of declaration. Kasi yun yung time na nagbabawas tayo ng retained earnings. Kaya ang only date na i-consider natin for dividends, for a cash dividend specifically, is etong December 1. Etong April 1 and May 31 has no effect on the shareholders equity. Tapos, ang sabi rin dito, revenues and expenses are recognized evenly during the year. So, kapag sinabi nating recognized evenly during the year, it simply means yung ating revenues nire-recognize siya equally on a monthly basis. Same with expenses. Yung expenses are being incurred equally on a monthly basis. And since both revenues and expenses daw are recognized evenly, it means yung net income natin is generated during the year evenly. On a monthly basis, equal din siya. Pero, ang sabi niya rito, except for OCI that is recognized at year-end. So, kung titingnan natin dito sa year 2020, itong net income niya, recognized to evenly during the year. So, pwede nating makuha yung net income per month. So, equally yun every month kasi nga, because of the word evenly. Pero, for this OCI, 28,000 pesos, hindi natin to pwedeng isama sa ating computation kasi itong 28,000 is determined at year-end, December 31, 2020. So, ito lang ang ating gagamitin, yung 180,000 pesos. So, ngayon, let's start the computation. So, let's start with the January 1 shareholders equity ni associate. At magkano daw yun? Yun ay 5,755,000 pesos. And again, yan ay shareholders equity. It means yan yung net asset ni associate on January 1, 2020. And since ang kailangan natin is the net asset of the associate on April 1, so we need to consider the movement from January 1, 2020 until April 1, 2020. And based dito sa information, ang tanging movement during the 3-month period is only the net income. So, magkano yung net income? ni associate from January to March lang 2020, which is 3 months. So kung evenly siya, so siya ay computed as 180,000 pesos, the net income for 1 year, times 3 months divided by 12. So that is 45,000 pesos. So siyempre, ang net income increases retained earnings, which will cause an increase in the shareholders' equity. So ibig sabihin, 5,755,000 pesos plus 45,000 pesos, yan ay 5.8 million pesos. At ano yan? Yan ngayon yung shareholders' equity ni associate on April 1, 2020. Which means, kung yan yung kanyang shareholders' equity on April 1, yan yung net assets ni associate on April 1. So, nakuha na natin siya at 5.8 million. The only problem is, yan ay hindi fair value. So, ibig sabihin, itong 5.8 million, yan yung difference or excess ng assets ni associate over its liabilities. Yun nga lang, ang problema natin ay hindi ito fair value. Kasi ang kailangan natin, di ba, na value na i-compare natin sa cost or consideration is yung fair value ng identifiable net assets. E ano ba itong 5.8 million? Yan yung identifiable net assets on April 1 pero nakabase sa book value. And since kailangan natin yung fair value, para maging fair value yan, kailangan nating i-consider yung differences between book value nung net assets at fair value nung net assets. So, paano natin malalaman yun? So, malalaman natin yon by identifying the items of assets and liabilities on April 1, 2020 na may mga book value na iba sa fair value. At saan natin makukuha yung information na yon? So, dito. So, sabi dito, on April 1, 2020, certain assets of DEF Corporation have book values different from their fair values as follows. So, eto lang yung mga assets na may mga fair value na iba sa book value nila on April 1, 2020. Ibig sabihin, yung other assets na hindi kasama dito, yung book value nila, pareha sa fair value. So, walang problema doon. Ang may problema lang tayo is yung mga assets and liabilities na magkaiba ang book value sa fair value. At kung titingnan natin, lahat ito ay assets. It means, yung lahat ng liabilities natin, yung book value nila, pareha sa fair value. So, gamit ito, mako-compute ngayon natin yung fair value ng identifiable net assets. So, mag-start tayo dito sa financial asset and equity instrument at fair value through other comprehensive income. So, etong FVOCI na to, naka-record siya at 140. Pero ang fair value niya on this date is 155,000 pesos. So, it means, nandito sa 5.8 million yung financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income. Pero, magkano dito sa 5.8 ang naisama? Siyempre, yun yung 140. So, ang kailangan lang natin gawin is mag-a-adjust tayo para maging 155 yung naisama dito. So, yun na yung undervaluation of the financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income. So, the term is undervaluation kasi mas mababa yung nasa books compared to its fair value. So, again, out of 5.8 million, ang amount na nandito is 140,000 pesos. At para maging fair value, kailangan maging 155. So, ang gagawin natin is, i-add natin yung difference ng dalawa, 15,000 pesos. So, yan ay 155 minus 140. So, 15,000 pesos. Tapos, i-add natin yun sa 5.8 million para yung maging value ng financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income will become 155,000 pesos. Tapos, dito naman sa inventory. So, yung inventory natin has a book value of 20,000. At itong 20,000 pesos na to, ito yung kasama dito sa 5.8 million. Pero, syempre, ang fair value niya dapat daw 25,000. So, ito yung kailangan nating amount. Since may 20,000 na dito si inventory, kailangan na lang natin dagdagan ng 5,000. At yung 5,000 na yun ay, again, undervaluation ng inventory. So, dadagdag natin yung 5,000 dito sa 20,000 na kasama sa 5.8 million para maging 25,000. And again, yung 5,000 is undervaluation ng inventory kasi mas maliit yung nasa libro, the book value, as compared to its fair value. Then, for the equipment, kung i-compare natin yung dalawa, ang book value is 570. Then, the fair value is 524,400. So, mas malaki ngayon ang book value ng equipment. So this time, ang tawag na dyan sa difference ng dalawa is overvaluation ng equipment. So magkano ang overvaluation nilang dalawa? So yun yung difference ng dalawa. So ngayon, out of 5.8 million, ang value ng equipment na kasama dito sa 5.8 million is 570,000 pesos. Pero ang fair value niya is only 524,400. So yun lang ang kailangan nating value ng equipment. So since 570 ang nandito sa 5.8 million, kailangan natin yung bawasan. Magkano ang ibabawas natin? So yun yung difference ng dalawa, which is 45,600 pesos. Then next, dito tayo sa land. So kung titingnan nyo, yung land naman, ganun din siya, undervalued siya. So undervalued siya ng 50,000 pesos. Kasi ang book value is 900, pero ang fair value is 950. So again, dito sa 5.8 million, may kasamang land dito. Pero magkano yung value ng land na kasama sa 5.8 million? Yun ay 900,000 pesos. And again, ang kailangan natin is 950,000. So since may 900 na dito, para maging 950, dagdagan na lang natin ng 50,000 pesos. Etong apat, eto lang yung mga assets na iba ang fair value sa book value. So sila lang yung kinonsider natin. Kasi yung all other items of assets and even liabilities, yung book value nila parehas na sa fair value. At nandito na yon, kasama na yun sa 5.8 million. So yung mga yon, wala na tayong problema doon. Dito na lang tayo may problema sa apat na to. At eto yung adjustments na ginawa natin sa apat para maging fair value sila. So pag kinonsider natin yan na 5.8 million, then i-consider itong apat na to, ang sagot dyan is 5,824,400. So yan ngayon yung total nito. Siyempre minus yung overvaluation. So 5,824,400. So ano yan? Yan na ngayon yung Associates Identifiable Net Assets on April 1, 2020. At measured na siya at fair value. Which is, eto na ngayon yung amount na kailangan nating i-compare sa cost or ating consideration paid. So ngayon, etong fair value of identifiable net assets, na-compute na natin, tapos na-compute na rin natin itong cost or consideration, which includes yung fair value ng previously held interest at consideration of new interest acquired. So, pag kinompare natin itong dalawa, malalaman na natin kung ang difference ba ng dalawa is goodwill or negative goodwill. Again, kapag mas malaki ang consideration, yung pinangbayad, kaysa sa binili, yung identifiable net assets, ang difference is goodwill. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang identifiable net assets ang binili mo. Kasama mong binili yung ibang factors or attributes ni associate na hindi makikita sa identifiable net assets. And that is in the form of goodwill. Pero kung mas mababa yung cost compared sa fair value of identifiable net assets, so nabili mo siya ng mas mura, ang difference is what we call negative goodwill. At siya naman yung letter B doon sa paragraph 32. So ngayon, let us now compare. So unahin natin yung cost. Magkano ang ating acquisition cost? So ang ating acquisition cost is 1,520,000 pesos. So paano yun nakuha? Yan yung ating 50,000 ordinary shares times the fair value of 30 pesos. So yun ay 1.5 million pesos. Tapos kaya siya nagkaroon ng 20,000 because of the transaction cost. So, itong ating cost or the acquisition cost, 1.52 million. So, i-compare natin ito ngayon sa ating binili. Ang binili natin is ito, yung identifiable net assets ni associate that should be measured at fair value. Yun nga lang, syempre, ang ownership natin is only 25%. At etong na-compute natin na net assets na 5,824,400 is hindi yan 25%. Yan yung 100%. So, ang kailangan lang natin is yung 25%. So, kunin natin. So, magkano ang fair value ng net assets acquired? Kasi hindi naman lahat itong 5,824,400 in-acquire natin. 25% lang ang in-acquire natin dyan. So, para makompute yun, so 5,824,400 multiplied by the percentage of ownership, 25%, so that is 1,456,100. Tapos, kunin mo ngayon yung difference. Ang difference is 63,900, which is mas malaki yung pinangbili kaysa doon sa binili na fair value ng net assets. So, ibig sabihin, itong excess na to is what we call the goodwill. So, yan yung letter A sa paragraph 32 ng PAS 28. So, 63,900 ang ating goodwill. So, halimbawa naman, mas mababa yung cost kesa sa fair value ng net assets acquired. So, kapag ganun, yung difference is your negative goodwill. At anong treatment daw kapag negative goodwill? So, kung babalikan natin, any excess daw of the entity's share of the net fair value of the investee's identifiable assets and liabilities over the cost of the investment is included as income. So, yung negative goodwill daw is part of the income in the determination of the entity's share of the associate or joint venture's profit or loss in the period in which the investment is acquired. So, ito yung treatment mo kapag negative goodwill. Pero since yung ating problem tayo ay goodwill, anong treatment sa goodwill? So, yung goodwill daw relating to an associate or a joint venture is included in the carrying amount of the investment. So, ang carrying amount ng ating investment at initial recognition is 1,520,000 pesos. So, kasama doon yung goodwill. Tapos, amortization daw of the goodwill is not permitted. Kasi nga, ang goodwill is never amortized, but it is subject to impairment. So, pwede tayo mag-record ng loss, pero yung loss na yun is an impairment loss. So, ngayon, meron tayong alternative solution para makompute yung goodwill natin. At ito yung solution na pinapakita sa textbook, which is hindi talaga siya alternative solution kasi ito yung solution talaga na dinidiscuss sa ating textbook. So, ano yun? So, ganito. So, let's start again with the acquisition cost. Ang acquisition cost natin is again 1.52 million. Tapos, ang next natin dyan is the carrying amount or the book value of the net assets acquired. So, ang difference nitong solution na to, dito sa first solution natin ng goodwill computation is after ng acquisition cost, ang ginamit natin is the fair value, di ba, ng net assets acquired. Pero dito sa other solution, ang ginamit is carrying amount or the book value of the net assets acquired. Ano ba tong book value of net assets acquired? Ito yun, yung 5.8 million, which is the identifiable net assets at book value on the date we obtained significant influence. Pero again, itong 5.8 million is 100%. Ang ownership lang natin is only 25%. So, kunin lang natin yung book value ng net assets acquired. Kasi ang in-acquire lang natin is 25%. So, that is 5.8 million times 0.25, that is 1,450,000 pesos. So, ngayon, after nyan, ide-deduct natin yung dalawa. Yung difference ng dalawa is yung tinatawag nating excess of cost over carrying amount of net assets acquired. So, magkano yan? 70,000 pesos. So, itong 70,000 pesos na to, again, ang tawag dyan is the excess of cost over carrying amount of net assets acquired. At ito yon yung nakakulay dilaw. Ang composition ng excess of cost over carrying amount is etong ating goodwill or negative goodwill at itong under and over valuation. So again, ang composition ng ating excess of cost over carrying amount of net assets acquired is etong either goodwill or negative goodwill at net under or over valuation ng identifiable net assets ng associate. So, since ang composition nitong 70,000 na excess of cost over book value of the net assets acquired ay dalawa, goodwill at yung net over or under valuation. So, para makompute yung goodwill, i-identify muna natin yung ating net under or over valuation. So, magkano yun? So, ang ating net under valuation of DEFs or associates net assets is ito yon, yung galing sa apat na assets. So, again, ito ay net under valuation. Bakit siya net under valuation? Kasi, kung papansinin mo, merong tatlong assets na undervalued. At yung undervaluation ng tatlo ay mas malaki as compared to the overvaluation ng nag-iisang equipment. Kaya, etong apat na to, pag kinonsider mo lahat yan, yan ay net undervaluation. Magkano? Yan ay 24,400. So, this is the net undervaluation nitong apat. Siyempre, itong 24,400, ito ay 100%. So, ang kukunin lang natin dyan is yung share natin, which is 25%. So, magkano ang 25% ng 24,100? So, that is 6,100 pesos. So, again, ang composition ng excess of cost over carrying amount of net assets acquired ay dalawa. Yung net under valuation or overvaluation at saka either goodwill or negative goodwill. So out of 70,000, ito ang net undervaluation, 6,100. Kaya ang excess ay the goodwill, which is 63,900. At ito din yung same goodwill we have computed in our first computation. So ito yung computation ng goodwill or negative goodwill that is discussed in our textbook. Pero basically, parehas lang yan dito sa computation nito. Ang only difference is dito ang ginamit ko is fair value of net assets acquired, which is also considered in this solution dito sa alternative solution ko. Bakit? Kasi etong fair value na 1,456,100, hinati niya lang pagdating dito sa alternative solution ko. At yun yung carrying amount na 1,450,000 at itong 6,100. Pag inad mo tong dalawang to, ang sagot ng dalawang yan ay 1,456,100, which is yan yung fair value of net assets acquired. So, kailangan lang nating hatiin itong fair value of net assets acquired into its book value tsaka yung net under overvaluation kasi kailangan nating ma-identify yung excess of cost over carrying amount of the net assets acquired. So, ngayon, balik tayo sa ating mga journal entries. So, 2020 pa rin tayo. So, after April 1, 2020, ang next transaction natin is on December 1, 2020. So, ano ang mangyayari sa December 1, 2020? Ang sabi kasi rito, cash dividends are declared daw on December 1. Siyempre, meron 2020. Magkano siya? 80,000 pesos. At tapos sabi dito, the date of record and date of payment of the cash dividends is on April 1 and May 31. Siyempre, yan ay the following year na mangyayari. So, dineclare siya ng December pero payable siya in May of next year. So, ano ang ating gagawin kapag meron dineclare na dividend si associate? So, again, di ba meron tayong tatlong dates when it comes to dividends? Date of declaration, date of record, tsaka date of payment or date of distribution. So, alam naman natin, tayo ay nagre-record ng dividend income kapag date of declaration. And since hindi pa naman tayo nakaka-receive ng cash doon, kaya nire-record muna natin siya as dividend receivable. Kasi, we recognize dividend income when we already have the right to receive the dividend. And kailan nangyayari yung right to receive the dividend? Siyempre, that is on the date of declaration. Kailan lang tayo magde-debit cash? Kailan natin siya marireceive? Siyempre, at date of payment or distribution. Dito tayo nagde-debit cash and instead of crediting dividend income, credit tayo dividend receivable. So, ito yung usual journal entries kapag tayo ay may cash dividend, property dividend, or scrip dividend. So, ito bang journal entry na to also applies to equity method? So, ano ang ating journal entry kapag tayo ay mayroong right to receive the dividend under equity method? So, syempre, dahil itong December 1 is just the date of declaration, so hindi tayo dito magde-debit cash. Instead, debit tayo ng dividend receivable. At magkano? Syempre, up to the extent of our ownership lang, which is 25%. So, 80,000 ang total dividends declared by the associate. So, ang atin lang doon ay 25%, which is 20,000 pesos. So, that is 80,000 times 0.25. Ang question is, ano ang ating i-credit? Is it also dividend income? So, ang i-credit natin ay hindi dividend income kasi under equity method, we do not recognize dividend income from the cash, property, or scrip dividend received from the associate. So, ano ang ating i-credit? So, ang ating i-credit is investment in associate, 20,000 pesos. So, ang i-credit natin is yung ating investment in associate na account. Ibig sabihin, decrease ito sa ating investment in associate. So, bakit siya decrease in investment in associate? So, basically kasi, yung equity method, kaya siya tinawag na equity method kasi parang kinokopya mo yung movements ng shareholders equity ni associate. So, kapag sinabing kinokopya mo yung movements ng equity ni associate, ibig sabihin, kung tataas ang equity ni associate, dapat tumaas din yung investment in associate na account. At kung bababa ang equity ni associate, dapat bababa din ang investment in associate na account. Kasi yung investment in associate na account is parang siya yung replica nung equity ni associate. Yun nga lang, syempre, sa point of view natin. at based yon sa ating ownership, which is only at 25%. And syempre, kung siya ay parang replica, ibig sabihin, lahat ng galaw ng equity ni associate dapat may corresponding movement din sa investment in associate na account. At parehas dapat. Kung tataas yung equity ni associate, dapat tataas din ang investment in associate. At kung bababa ang equity ni associate, dapat bababa din ang investment in associate. And syempre, alam naman natin na kapag nagde-declare ng isang cash, property, or scrip dividend ang isang entity, alam naman natin na yun ay nakakapag-cause ng decrease in the retained earnings. At pag nabawasan ang retained earnings, syempre, mababawasan ang shareholders' equity ng company. So, ibig sabihin, at declaration, December 1, 2020, kung nag-declare si DEF ng 80,000 na dividend, ibig sabihin, mababawasan yung kanyang equity on this date ng 80,000 pesos. So, dapat, kung mababawasan ang equity ni associate, dapat, babawasan din natin yung ating investment in associate na account. Yun nga lang, hindi buong 80,000. Syempre, only up to the extent of our ownership, which is 25%. Kaya ito ay credit 20,000 using investment in associate na account. And again, under equity method, yung mga galaw sa equity ni associate, dapat gagayahin yon ng investor only up to its percentage of ownership. Pero ang i-discuss lang natin dito is yung mga most common movements ng equity. At yun yung net income or comprehensive income tsaka yung dividends. Kasi maraming transactions na may effect sa shareholders' equity. At hindi naman natin kayang i-discuss lahat yun kasi iba-iba yung effect nun minsan. So doon lang tayo magpo-focus sa most common na taon-taon nakaka-apekto siya sa equity ng isang kumpanya. At yun yung net income or comprehensive income at yung dividend declaration or payment. So in this instance, December 1, dividend declaration to. Which type of dividend? Cash dividend, property dividend, at scrip dividend. So ngayon, after December 1, 2020, punta ngayon tayo dun sa next date. Ano yung next date na journal entry natin? That is on December 31, 2020. Bakit? Ang sabi dito, on December 31, 2020, DEF Corporation declared a 2-for-1 split. So, DEF ordinary share capital daw has a fair value of 30 pesos per share at year-end. So, since nagkaroon ng share split, so yan ay split up. So, for every 1 share daw, magiging 2 shares na daw siya. And since this is a share split, so wala yung effect sa total shareholders equity ni associate. So, wala rin yung movement sa investment in associate na account. Pero, ang movement lang yan is dun sa number of shares. Yun lang naman ang affected. Kaya, ang entry natin sa libro natin, tayong investor, ay hindi isang journal entry. Ang entry natin ay isang memorandum entry. So, again, pag sinabing memorandum entry, it's just a narrative of the transaction. So, just describe the transaction. So, ang ating memorandum entry for the share split is, ayan, DEF declared a 2-for-1 split resulting to an increase in the number of shares from 20,000 shares into 40,000 ordinary shares. So, ang ating ownership na is now at 40,000 ordinary shares, which is still at 25%. Tapos, syempre, aside dyan, on December 31, meron tayong i-record sa ating libro as an adjustment to our investment in associate account. At ano yun? Alam naman natin na every year-end, ang isang company ay nagre-record ng mga closing entries. At ang closing entries pertains to the net income or comprehensive income ng isang company na kino-close sa retained earnings. So, pag kino-close sa retained earnings, ibig sabihin, may effect yun sa shareholders' equity. So, gagawin nyo ni associate. Siya ay magpe-prepare ng closing entries para sa kanyang net income at makaka-apekto yun sa retained earnings niya, which will affect its shareholders' equity. At kung makaka-apekto yun sa shareholders' equity ni associate, so dapat makaka-apekto din yun sa ating investment in associate na account. Kasi nga, ang sabi natin kanina, yung mga movements sa equity accounts ni associate, dapat gagayahin yun ng investment in associate na account natin. So, kung may net income si associate, obviously, tataas yung kanyang equity. So, dapat tumaas din yung investment in associate na account. Pero only up to our ownership. So, kaya kailangan natin makompute yung net income ni associate. Pero yung net income na i-consider lang natin dapat is yung net income ni associate starting nung date na nagkaroon tayo ng significant influence. At ano ba yung date na nagkaroon tayo ng significant influence? Syempre yun yung April 1, 2020. So April 1, 2020 until year-end, which is December 31, 2020. So ilang buwan yun? Yun ay 9 months. So i-determine natin yung net income niya. So, ang net income niya, based sa kanyang libro for year 2020 is 180,000 pesos. Tapos, meron siyang OCI dito na 28,000. So, ang kanyang comprehensive income for 1 year is 208,000 pesos. And again, ang kailangan lang natin is from April 1 to December 31, 2020. So, yung net income, hahatiin natin dito. Kukunin natin yung 9 months nitong 180,000 pesos. Pero dito sa OCI, etong 28,000 pesos na to, hindi na natin to i-prorate ng 9 months kasi kinocompute itong fair value change na to at year-end. Sabi dito sa problem, OCI is recognized at year-end. Siyempre, alam naman natin yung both net income at OCI, may effect yan sa shareholders' equity or the comprehensive income. At since yung comprehensive income will cause an increase in the shareholders' equity, so dapat mag-i-increase din ang investment in associate na account. Pero again, only up to our percentage of ownership. So, compute natin, magkano yung share natin doon. So, for the comprehensive income, per book, so based dun sa kanyang records, ang kanyang net income for 9 months lang, again, kasi nga, ang date na nagkaroon tayo ng significant influence is April 1 until December 31, which is year-end, so 9 months yon. And since sabi niya rito, revenues and expenses are recognized evenly during the year, so pwede nating i-prorate tong 180,000 times 9 months divided by 12 months. So that is 135,000 pesos. Tapos, yung OCI niya na 28,000 pesos. So that is 28,000 pesos. So, ito yung ating comprehensive income for 9 months. Yun nga lang, yan ay based sa kanyang libro, per books. So, pag mag-increase ang equity ni associate, ito yung gagamitin niya mga amounts. At yun yung gagayahin nating increase. Pero, ang tanong is, ito rin ba yung mga amounts na gagamitin natin as our basis to increase our investment in associate na account? Ang sagot ay hindi. Bakit? Kasi, etong net income na to at OCI na yan yung net income and OCI sa libro ni associate. Which is, hindi ito ang comprehensive income ni associate sa ating point of view, the investor. Again, etong comprehensive income na to is yung comprehensive income sa point of view ni associate. Pero, ang amount na i-record natin as increase in our investment in associate na account is based doon sa comprehensive income ni associate sa point of view natin. So, ibig sabihin, not necessarily, yan yung comprehensive income niya sa point of view natin. Kasi possible, hindi yan yung nasa point of view natin. Ano ba yung nasa point of view natin? Yan din ba yung comprehensive income niya? In our problem, hindi. Iba ang comprehensive income niya sa ating point of view. Bakit iba? Kasi meron pa tayong i-consider. Kasi, etong comprehensive income na to, net income at OCI, na-compute ito based sa changes ng book values ng net assets ni associate. Ibig sabihin, changes yan sa assets and liabilities ni associate based on their book values. Pero, syempre, sa point of view natin, hindi natin ginamit yung book value ni associate, di ba? Sa point of view natin, ang kino-consider natin na net asset ni associate is yung kanyang fair value at the date we obtain significant influence. So, ibig sabihin, sa point of view natin, ang net income at OCI dapat ni associate is based doon sa changes ng net assets ni associate based doon sa fair value ng kanyang net assets at the date we obtained significant influence. So, kaya ngayon, kukumpute natin yung net income and OCI ni associate based sa ating point of view. So, unahin natin ang OCI. So, yung OCI niya rito is 28,000 pesos. And yung OCI niya dito is yan yung change in the fair value of its financial asset in equity instrument at FVOCI. Paano na compute yung 28,000 pesos? So, again, syempre, yan yung change ng fair value. which is yan yung increase in the fair value from 140,000 pesos, tapos naging 168,000 pesos siya at year-end. Etong 140,000 na to, ito yung book value niya on January 1, which is also yung book value niya ng April 1, 2020, kasi nga nagre-remeasure lang si associate every year-end. Kaya itong 140, book value nito ng January 1, tsaka April 1 na din, 2020. At kung nag-recognize siya ng gain na 28,000 in OCI at year-end, ibig sabihin, ang fair value ng FVOCI niyang financial asset is 168,000 pesos at year-end. Pero syempre, sa point of view natin, hindi 28,000 ang gain, ang increase in fair value. Ang increase in fair value sa point of view natin is syempre magsisimula sa 155,000 pesos at magiging 168,000 pesos. Again, yung 168,000 pesos, yun yung fair value ng kanyang financial asset in equity instrument at FVOCI on December 31, 2020. Yung 168,000 is computed as 140,000 plus 28,000 pesos. So, sa point of view natin, ang increase sa fair value ng kanyang financial asset is 168,000 minus 155,000 pesos, which is 13,000 pesos. So, ibig sabihin, sa point of view natin, ang OCI dapat ni associate ay hindi 28,000. Dapat 13,000 pesos. So, paano magiging 13,000 yung 28,000 niyang OCI? So, magkakaroon tayo ng adjustment. Ano yung adjustment na yun? So, yun na yung amortization of excess of cost over carrying amount. So, ano yung amortization of excess of cost over carrying amount? So, yung excess of cost over carrying amount, ito yung kanina na kinumpute natin gamit yung alternative solution natin. So, kaya pwedeng gamitin tong solution na to kasi kailangan nating ma-determine yung excess of cost over carrying amount of the net assets acquired, which in our case is 70,000 pesos. At saan nanggaling yung 70,000 pesos? Nanggaling yan sa 6,100, which is 25% nung net undervaluation. At again, saan galing tong 24,400? Yan yung net undervaluation ng apat nating assets. At syempre, kasama din sa 70,000 is yung goodwill na 63,900. So, etong 70,000 pesos na to, eto yung tinutukoy niyang excess of cost over carrying amount na kailangan mong i-amortize. Pero, etong amortization, it is not applicable for goodwill. Ang goodwill is never amortized. Ang goodwill is subject to impairment. Again, ang goodwill ay hindi ina-amortize. Siya lang ay nai-impair. So, sino lang yung pwede mong i-amortize? Ito lang, etong 6,100 pesos, which is yung 25% nung net undervaluation ng ating apat na asset. So, ito lang ay amortize natin, itong 6,100. So, dito tayo ngayon mag-focus sa amortization ng net undervaluation. Again, kanina sabi natin, itong OCI niya na 28,000 pesos, sa point of view natin, hindi yan 28,000 pesos. It should be 13,000 pesos. Paano siya magiging 13,000 pesos? So, para maging 13,000 pesos siya, kailangan nating i-amortize yung excess of cost over carrying amount related to the account that has an effect on this OCI. Ano yun? Yun yung financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income na undervalued. So, since 13,000 ang OCI ni associate sa point of view natin, kailangan nating i-amortize yung 15,000 na undervaluation ni FVOCI. So, para i-amortize ang undervaluation ng asset, siya ay negative 15,000 pesos. So, kapag sinubtract natin yung 15 sa 28, ang magiging OCI na is 13,000 pesos. At ayan ang OCI ni associate sa point of view natin, the investor. So, yan yung magiging part ng comprehensive income adjusted. And again, adjusted to based sa point of view ni investor natin. So, ngayon, meron na tayong OCI, 13,000 pesos. Dito naman tayo mag-focus sa net income ni associate. Siyempre, yung net income niyang 135,000, hindi ito yung net income ni associate for 9 months sa point of view natin. So, i-adjust natin yan. So, ano ang adjustment natin dyan? Again, ang adjustment dyan is yung amortization of excess of cost over carrying amount. Let's start with the inventory. Ang sabi rito, ito yung kanyang inventory on April 1, 2020. So, nabenta lahat yan in 2020. Ibig sabihin, nung nag-compute ng cost of goods sold, si associate, ang ginamit niya sa computation ng kanyang cost of goods sold as April 1, 2020 inventory, syempre ay 20,000 pesos. At yun ay nag-arrive sa 9 months na net income na 135,000 pesos. Again, ulitin ko, since etong inventory na to ay nabenta ni associate lahat in 2020, ibig sabihin kasama lahat to sa cost of goods sold ni associate in 2020. At magkano yung amount na kasama sa cost of goods sold? Etong 20,000 pesos. Which is, yun yung nag-cost kaya nagkaroon siya ng net income na 135,000 pesos. Pero syempre, sa point of view natin, hindi dapat yun ang ginamit niyang amount ng inventory para makompute yung kanyang cost of goods sold. Dapat, yung cost ng inventory na ginamit niya sa computation ng kanyang cost of goods sold, sa point of view natin, should be 25,000 pesos. So, ibig sabihin, mas mababa yung cost of goods sold na ni-record ni associate sa libro niya. Kasi 20,000 pesos lang yung inventaryo doon. E sa point of view natin na investor, dapat yung inventaryo na nandoon sa cost of goods sold should be based on 25,000 pesos. So kaya, para maging 25,000 pesos, yung inventaryo na part ng cost of goods sold, ang gagawin natin is ibabawas natin yung 5,000 pesos sa 135,000 pesos. Bakit? Kasi yung cost of goods sold sa libro ni associate, kaya siya nag-arrive dito sa 135,000 na net income is based dito sa cost ng inventory na 20,000 pesos. And since 20,000 yung cost of goods sold dito sa 135, sa point of view natin, 25,000. So, mas mababa yung cost of goods sold na na-deduct dito sa 135. So, dagdagan natin yung deduction ng additional 5,000 pesos para mabuo yung cost of goods sold na 25,000 pesos. Tapos, dito naman tayo sa pangatlo, the equipment. So, yung equipment natin dito is overvalued naman siya. So, ibig sabihin ng overvalued again is mas mataas yung nasa libro kaysa sa fair value niya. And syempre, since ito ay equipment, ito ay isang depreciable asset. Kung siya ay depreciable asset, dine-depreciate siya. At ang depreciation ay kasama sa computation ng net income. Ibig sabihin, etong net income ni associate na 135,000 pesos, after to ng effects ng depreciation ng equipment ni associate. Based sa anong value? Based dito sa 570,000 pesos. So, again, yung depreciation na ginamit ni associate para makompute niya yung net income na 135,000 pesos ay based sa book value na 570,000 pesos as of April 1, 2020. Pero syempre, again, sa point of view natin, hindi iyon yung value ng equipment on April 1. Ang value ng equipment is 524,400. Ibig sabihin, kung magko-compute tayo ng net income ni associate, gamit yung depreciation ng equipment ni associate, dapat base yon sa value na 524,400. Ito dapat yung ide-depreciate. And again, syempre, yung depreciation dito is naka-base na sa 570,000 pesos. So, ang adjustment na lang na kailangan natin is magkano yung kailangang adjustment para ang maging depreciation is naka-base sa 524,400. So, doon napapasok yung amortization ng overvaluation ng equipment, which is magkano? 45,600. Etong 45,600, yan yung difference between 570 and 524,400. So, anong mas malaking depreciation? Yung depreciation sa 570 or depreciation sa 524,400? Obviously, mas malaki ang depreciation sa 570, which is yun yung na-deduct sa 135. So, ibig sabihin, sobra yung depreciation dito sa net income na nakarecord sa libro ni associate base sa ating point of view. Kaya, babawasan lang natin yung depreciation na yon or dadagdagan yung net income. By how much? By 7,200. So, dadagdagan natin ng 7,200 yung net income. So, ano tong 7,200? Etong 7,200, ayan yung difference ng 9-month depreciation based sa 570,000 pesos na book value na ginamit ni associate at 9 months depreciation ng equipment based sa 524,400. Paano na-compute yung 7,200? Yan ay 45,600 divided by 57 months times 9 months. Saan ko nakuha yung 57 months? Ang sabi kasi dito sa problem is, ito yung value nila on April 1, book value and fair value. Pero, ang remaining life daw ng equipment is 5 years, starting January 1, 2020. Di ba April 1 balances na to? So, kung April 1 balances na to at yung 5-year life starts on January 1, 2020, which is 3 months ang pagitan ng January 1 at April 1, so, out of 5 years, gamit na yung 3 months. So, ilang taon na lang yung natitira or ilang buwan na lang ang natitira sa buhay ng equipment. So, yun ay 57 months kasi 60 months ang 5 years. Bawas na yung 3, so 57 months na lang ang natitira. So, 45,600 divided by 57 times 9, assuming straight line method of depreciation ang ginagamit ng associate. Siyempre, sa pag-depreciate ng kanyang equipment. Or kung gusto nyo ma-insure, so pwede natin computein yung depreciation. So, ang depreciation dito sa 524,400 is 82,800. Paano na-compute yan? Yan ay 524,400 divided by 57 months times 9 months. So, yan ay 82,800. Depreciation yan based sa 524,400 na fair value. At kung based naman sa book value na 570,000, yan ay 90,000 pesos or 570,000 pesos divided by 57 times 9 months. At again, ang depreciation na nabawas dito sa 135,000 is itong 90,000 pesos. So, ang difference ng dalawa is 7,200. That is 82,800 minus 90,000 pesos. So, dapat sa point of view natin, ang depreciation niya ay 82,800 lang. Kaya, i-add back natin yung 7,200 pesos. So, ngayon, punta tayo sa last asset na may difference ang book value at fair value. Yun yung land. Ang land natin naman is undervalued by 50,000 pesos. So, paano to i-amortize ang land? Hindi naman siya depreciable asset. So, kung hindi depreciable asset ang land, kailan siya i-amortize? So, basically, ano ba yung concept behind amortization of excess of cost over carrying amount? So, itong amortization of excess of cost over carrying amount, ginagawa mo lang to kapag etong mga assets na to, nagkakaroon na sila ng effect sa comprehensive income. So, ina-amortize lang ang excess of cost over carrying amount kapag nagkakaroon na sila ng effect sa comprehensive income. Kagaya nitong financial asset at fair value through other comprehensive income, inamortize natin siya ng buo yung 15,000 pesos kasi nagkaroon siya ng effect sa statement of comprehensive income kasi kailangan natin kunin yung changes in the fair value. So, itong inventory naman, inamortize natin siya kasi nagkaroon siya ng effect sa comprehensive income dahil naapektuhan niya yung net income through the cost of goods sold. Tapos, itong equipment, ganun din. Inamortize natin siya kasi nagkaroon din siya ng effect sa net income, which is part ng comprehensive income through the depreciation, di ba? So, ibig sabihin, yung undervaluation ng land, i-amortize lang natin yon kapag nagkaroon na rin siya ng effect sa comprehensive income, which is kailan yun? So, normally, pwede yon kung ma-impair yung land, which is basically, bihirang ma-impair ang land, o kung ibebenta natin yung land. Siyempre, pag binenta natin yung land, magkakaroon yun ng gain or loss. So, pag nagkaroon ng gain or loss, yun yung time na maapektuhan niya yung comprehensive income. So, yun yung time na i-amortize natin yung undervaluation ng land. Pero depende pa din yun. Kung lahat ba ng lupa ay binenta or ilan lang. Parang katulad dito sa inventory. Yung buong 5,000 na undervaluation ng inventory, inamortize natin siya ng buo. Bakit? Kasi ang sabi dito sa problem, yung inventory were all sold in 2020. Nabenta siya lahat in 2020. Kaya yung buong 5,000 pesos, inamortize natin. Pero kung portion lang yung nabenta in 2020, so dapat portion lang rin ng 5,000 ang i-amortize natin. Related lang doon sa inventory na nabenta. Yung hindi pa nabenta, hindi pa yun syempre nakaapekto sa cost of goods sold. So, hindi pa yun nakaapekto sa comprehensive income. Kaya para dun sa undervaluation, para sa inventory na hindi pa nabebenta, hindi pa yun i-amortize. Again, ang concept behind sa amortization of excess of cost over carrying amount is i-amortize lang sila kung etong mga assets na to ay magkakaroon na ng effect sa comprehensive income. So, dahil walang amortization yung land, so eto na yung ating adjustments for the net income. Kaya ang ating net income is 137,200. At itong net income na yan ang net income ni associate for 9 months sa point of view natin, the investor. At syempre, 100% net income to ni associate at 100% OCI to ni associate. At ang percentage of ownership natin is only 25%. So, kukunin lang natin yung ating share. So, unahin natin yung sa net income. So, syempre 25% yan. So, ang share natin dyan is 34,300. At sa OCI naman, 25% din. Ang share natin is 3,250 pesos. So, again, ang sabi natin, under equity method, kagayahin natin yung movement sa equity ni associate. Pero syempre, yung movements dapat based sa point of view natin. So, ang movement sa equity ni associate is 135,000 net income at OCI na 28,000 pesos, which is sa point of view niya. Yun ang movement niya. Sa point of view natin, ang movement dapat niya is 137,200 at 13,000. So, ito yung gagayahin natin na movement based sa point of view natin at syempre only up to the extent of our ownership, which is 25%. So, ang net income will increase the equity. So, mag-increase ang ating investment in associate for 34,300 related to the adjusted net income. At yung equity ni associate, syempre mag-increase yon for the OCI of 13,000 pesos based sa point of view natin. Syempre, ang record natin, yung share lang natin, which is 3,250. So, ngayon, i-record na natin. So, ang entrada natin is, tayo ay magka-credit share in OCI of the associate, that is 3,250 pesos. So, yan ay credit kasi income yan. Tapos, credit tayo share in profit of associate, 34,300. Yeah, so, yan yung 25% share natin sa net income ni associate. So, bakit magkahiwalay na ni-record to? Kasi, itong 34,300, since yan ay galing sa net income ni associate, adjusted, so, magiging part yung 34,300 sa net income computation natin. Tapos, itong 3,250, since ito ay galing sa 25% ng OCI ni associate, itong 3,250, lalabas naman to sa computation ng ating other comprehensive income. Tapos, para makumpleto ang journal entry, debit tayo investment in associate for 37,550 pesos. So, mag-i-increase ang ating investment in associate, which is 25% of the increase in the equity of the associate. At 25% to ng ng total ng net income and other comprehensive income ni subsidiary na 150,200. And again, ito yung comprehensive income ni associate based sa ating point of view. Kasi nga, sa point of view ni associate, ito ang kanyang comprehensive income, yung based sa kanyang libro, 163,000 pesos. So, yung ginawa natin kanina, yun yung mga procedures for the subsequent measurement under the equity method. So, isa-isahin natin yun. So, katulad nga na sinabi ko kanina, ang equity method is, ang pinaka-concept behind the equity method is that if mayroong movements sa net asset ni associate, dapat there should also be a movement in the investment in associate na account. Pero syempre, only up to the extent of our percentage of ownership. So basically, kung ano yung change sa equity ni associate, ganun din yung corresponding change sa ating investment in associate. So, ano yung mga most common change in the equity of the associate? So, una ay investee's financial performance. So, sabi dito, the carrying amount is increased or decreased to recognize the investor's share of the profit or loss of the investee after the date of acquisition. Again, itong date of acquisition na to is the date we obtained significant influence. At sa ating problem, that is April 1, 2020. Tapos, the investor's share of the investee's profit or loss is recognized in the investor's profit or loss. So, yun yung account title nating share in the profit of the associate. Pero, again, yung share natin sa profit ni associate, yun ay based doon sa net income ni associate sa point of view natin. And yung computation ng kanyang net income sa point of view natin is the application of paragraph 32 ng PAS 28 na ang sabi niya, appropriate adjustments to the entity's share of the associates or joint ventures profit or loss after acquisition are made in order to account for For example, for depreciation of the depreciable assets based on their fair values at the acquisition date. Similarly, appropriate adjustments to the entity's share of the associates or joint ventures profit or loss after acquisition are made for impairment losses such as for goodwill or property, plant, and equipment. So basically, etong paragraph 32 na to, this refers to the adjustments that we made on the net income or net loss of the investee para mag-arrive doon sa net income or net loss ni investee based sa ating point of view. And yung paragraph 32 is the application of the amortization of the excess of cost over the book value of the net assets acquired. Then, ang sunod naman is investee's dividend. So, ito yung dividend na dinedeclare ni investee or the associate. So, again, what happens when the investee declared a dividend, specifically cash dividend, property dividend, or scrip dividend? Sabi niya, this is a distribution from the investee. Marireceive to ni investor. So, ano daw ang mangyari kapag si investee ay may dineclare na ganitong mga dividends? So, distributions received from an investee reduce the carrying amount of the investment. Kaya, nung nag-declare si investee ng dividendo, specifically cash dividend, binawasan natin yung investment in associate nating account. Kasi nga, ginagaya natin yung movement sa net assets or equity ni associate, which is also a reduction. Then, investee's other comprehensive income. And this will complete the comprehensive income of the investee. So, sabi niya, adjustments to the carrying amount may also be necessary for changes in the investor's proportionate interest in the investee arising from changes in the investee's other comprehensive income. So, dito sa ating problem na sinagutan, ang source ng OCI ni investee is yung kanyang investment sa equity instrument na minimeasure niya at fair value through other comprehensive income. And syempre, ang sabi natin, ang other comprehensive income affects the shareholders' equity of a corporation. So, ibig sabihin, it affects the equity or the net assets of the associate. And since tayo ay investor at associate natin, yung investee, so sabi rito, kailangan i-recognize din natin yung change sa investee's other comprehensive income. So, gagayahin din natin yun. So, ano do yung mga possible sources ng OCI? So, such changes include those arising from the revaluation of the property, plant, and equipment and from foreign exchange translation differences. So, as of this moment, since ang dinidiscuss pa lang natin is investment in equity, hindi pa tayo nakakarating sa property, plant, and equipment, so, hindi pa natin na-discuss yung revaluation of property, plant, and equipment. So, this will be discussed, of course, under the topic property, plant, and equipment. And itong foreign exchange translation differences, this is also a source of other comprehensive income. Pero this will be discussed in your advanced accounting subjects. Then, the investor's share of those changes is recognized in the investor's other comprehensive income. Kaya, yung atin namang ni-record na share in the OCI of the associate, yun ay lilitaw sa ating comprehensive income, which is the investor's other comprehensive income. So ngayon, let us proceed to the provision in the standard kapag ang reporting date ni associate ay iba sa reporting date ni investor. So, sabi dito, under paragraph 33, the most recent available financial statements of the associate or joint venture are used by the entity in applying the equity method. When the end of the reporting period of the entity is different from that of the associate or joint venture, the associate or joint venture prepares for the use of the entity financial statements as of the same date as the financial statements of the entity unless it is impracticable to do so. So, dun sa problem natin kanina, wala tayong problema kasi yung reporting date ni associate ay parehas sa reporting date ni investor. Parehas silang December 31. So, syempre, ang gagamitin ni investor when applying the equity method is syempre yung financial statement na gawa ni associate as of the reporting date dahil parehas naman sila ng reporting date. Pero daw kapag magkaiba ang reporting date ni associate, halimbawa March 31, so ang mangyayari daw dapat si associate ay gumawa ng financial statements as of December 31 kung ang December 31 is yung reporting date ni investor. Tapos, kapag nakagawa na si associate ng financial statements as of December 31, which is the reporting date of the investor, so yun ang pwedeng gamitin ni investor in applying the equity method. Then, under paragraph 34, when, in accordance with paragraph 33, the financial statements of an associate or a joint venture used in applying the equity method are prepared as of the date different from that used by the entity, adjustments shall be made for the effects of significant transactions or events that occur between that date and the date of the entity's financial statements. In any case, the difference between the end of the reporting period of the associate or joint venture and that of the entity shall be no more than 3 months. The length of the reporting periods and any difference between the ends of the reporting periods shall be the same from period to period. So, dito naman sa paragraph 34, in case daw na iba ang reporting date ni associate at gumagawa siya syempre ng financial statements niya as of its reporting date, which is iba sa reporting date ni investor. For example, ang reporting date ni associate ay November 30, pero ang reporting date ni investor ay December 31. So, pwede pa rin daw yung gamitin in applying the equity method. Yun nga lang, kailangan daw na magkaroon ng adjustments. At yung adjustments daw na yun should reflect the significant transactions na nangyari between the reporting date ni associate at ni investor. So, in case na ang reporting date ni associate ay November 30, tapos ang reporting date naman ni investor ay December 31, so, using the November 30 financial statements ni associate, magkakaroon tayo ng adjustment for the significant transactions na nangyari in December para makagawa tayo ng financial statements ni associate as of December 31, which is the same reporting date ni investor. So basically, ang paragraph 34, ang gusto lang niyang pagawa is kailangan i-convert mo yung financial statements ni associate from its reporting date to the reporting date of the investor. So ngayon, let us proceed to the other provisions of the standard related to the subsequent measurement under equity method. So sabi rito sa paragraph 35 and 36, the entity's financial statements shall be prepared using uniform accounting policies for like transactions and events in similar circumstances. If an associate or a joint venture uses accounting policies other than those of the entity for like transactions and events in similar circumstances, adjustments shall be made to make the associate or joint venture's accounting policies conform to those of the entity when the associate's or joint venture's financial statements are used by the entity in applying the equity method. So, syempre, under the equity method, ang sabi nga natin, si investor and associate are considered as a single economic entity. So, basically, dapat pare-parehas tayo ng accounting policies na ginagamit. So, kung ano yung ginagamit dapat ni investor na accounting policy in the application of the equity method, ganun din daw dapat ang accounting policy na gagamitin para kay associate when applying the equity method. At in case daw na yung accounting policy ni associate ay iba sa accounting policy ni investor, kailangan gumawa ka ng adjustments kay associate para mag-reflect yung accounting policy ni investor. So, for example, si investor ay naka FIFO method, pero si investee or si associate, ang ginagamit niya is the weighted average method. So, when applying the equity method, so kailangan gumawa ng mga adjustments para yung weighted average ni associate ay maging FIFO method. Then, sa paragraph 37 naman, if an associate or a joint venture has outstanding cumulative preference shares that are held by parties other than the entity and are classified as equity, the entity computes its share of profit or loss after adjusting for the dividends on such shares, whether or not the dividends have been declared. So, in paragraph 37, we should consider this when we are computing for the share in the profit or loss of the associate. Kasi, syempre, kapag ang isang associate ay meron siyang outstanding preference shares at alam naman natin ang preference shares, sila ay preferred as to the distribution of dividends. So, kaya kapag meron kang net income na na-compute, katulad ng kinumpute natin kanina, at si associate ay merong outstanding preference share, specifically cumulative preference share. So, bago natin kumpitin yung share ng mga ordinary shareholders, so kailangan ibawas muna natin yung dividend attributable to the cumulative preference shares. Nag-declare man ng dividend or hindi. Pero kapag ang preference share ni associate ay non-cumulative, magdededuct din tayo. Pero magdededuct lang tayo kung nag-declare sa associate. Tapos, kung may matira, yun ang paghahatian ng mga ordinary shareholders. So, punta ngayon tayo sa ating financial statement presentation. So, unahin natin sa Statement of Comprehensive Income. So, sa Statement of Comprehensive Income, yung share in profit of associate, so dito siya lilitaw sa computation ng net income. Then, yung share natin in associate na 3,250, dito siya sa baba ng net income. Tapos sa ating statement of financial position, ang investment in associate is under the non-current asset section ng balance sheet. At sa ating shareholders equity section, magkakaroon tayo ngayon ng 3,250 pesos na cumulative other comprehensive income. Wala nang cumulative other comprehensive income natin related doon sa financial asset at fair value through OCI natin. Yun yung previously held interest. Kasi di ba sinara natin tong 15,000 pesos buo nung April 1, 2020 nung ni-reclassify natin yung previously held interest into investment in associate. Kaya etong 3,250, lahat na to galing doon sa OCI ni associate. So, ngayon, punta na tayo sa 2021. So, next year na to. So, ano yung una nating entrada dito, 2021? So, ang unang entrada natin dito is yung May 31. At anong mangyari dyan? Sa May 31 is yung date of payment. So, kung natatandaan nyo, meron tayong na-record noong December 1, 2020 na dividend receivable. So, makokolekta natin yun ngayon. So, debit cash for 20,000 pesos. Credit dividend receivable, 20,000 pesos. At yan yung 25% ng 80,000 na dineclare ni associate noong 2020. And again, yung dividend receivable na yan, na-record na natin yan noong 2020, December 1. Tapos, nag-declare uli siya December 1, 2021. 70,000 pesos naman. Pero syempre, again, ang share lang natin dyan is 25%. So, mag-record ulit tayo December 1. So, ang entrada natin, dividend receivable for 25%. So, that is 17,500. Then, credit investment in associate for 17,500 pesos. Then, again, kaya tayo nag-credit ng investment in associate kasi syempre, ginaya natin yung change in the equity kasi nga, nag-declare siya ng cash dividend. So, ang declaration ng cash dividend will cause the decrease in retained earnings kaya mababawasan din yung equity ni associate. At kung mababawasan yung equity ni associate, dapat mabawasan din yung ating investment in associate na account. Kasi nga yung investment in associate na account is gaya-gaya sa movement ng equity ni associate. Pero only up to the extent of our ownership which is 25%, kaya siya ay 17,500 pesos. So ngayon, ang next entry natin for 2021 is based doon sa magiging movement sa equity uli ni associate for 2021. And yun yung kanyang comprehensive income. Again, yung comprehensive income ni associate will cause an effect in the shareholders equity ni associate. Kaya gagayahin uli natin yun, pero only up to 25%. So kung titingnan natin dito sa kanyang statement of comprehensive income for 2021, hindi siya income, loss siya. Meron siyang comprehensive loss na 56,000 pesos. And syempre, since loss to, ang effect niyan sa kanyang equity ay decrease. So, kung magdi-decrease ang equity niya, gagayahin din natin yon. Magdi-decrease din ang investment in associate na account, pero only up to 25%. At dapat yung amount na i-record natin, yung amount na based sa ating point of view. So, bago tayo mag-record, computein muna natin magkano yung comprehensive income ni associate based sa ating point of view. So, mag-start tayo sa per books nila, comprehensive loss. So, net loss nila ay 48,000 pesos. So, ito yung base sa kanyang statement of comprehensive income. At may other comprehensive loss siya na 8,000 pesos. So, again, yan yung comprehensive loss niya sa point of view niya. Pero sa point of view natin, hindi yan ang kanyang comprehensive loss. Kasi adjust natin yan. And again, ano yung adjustment natin? Yun yung amortization of excess over carrying amount. So again, ang sabi nga natin, magkakaroon ng amortization ng excess over carrying amount, which is etong 70,000 pesos na to, i-amortize siya kung magkakaroon na ng effect yung mga related assets and liabilities sa comprehensive income. And ano yung mga assets and liabilities na yon? Ito lang. 4 lang yung atin at puro assets yan. Walang liabilities. Pero may mga instances na may liabilities. Ibig sabihin, alin dito sa 4 na to yung nagkaroon ng effect sa comprehensive income ni associate in 2021. So, eto na lang. Eto na lang na equipment. Yung FAFBOCI tsaka sa inventory, wala nang amortization dyang magaganap. Bakit? Kasi etong 15,000 pesos na to at saka tong 5,000 pesos na to for both FBOCI at inventory, parehas na yang na-amortize ng buo. Fully amortized na silang dalawa. Ibig sabihin, fully amortized na silang dalawa noong 2020 pa lang. Naubos na agad sila. Ibig sabihin, wala ka nang i-amortize pa related dito sa undervaluation ng FA, FBOCI at undervaluation ng inventory. So, alin na lang dito sa 4 ang hindi pa nauubos through amortization? So, eto na lang sa equipment at sa land. Yung sa equipment, syempre, i-amortize natin yan ngayong taon kasi magkakaroon uli yan ng effect sa Statement of Comprehensive Income ni associate. Kasi, anong effect niya sa comprehensive income? Syempre, yan ay dinedepreciate. So, para sa equipment, ganun pa rin yung ating procedure, assuming straight line method ang ating depreciation method. So, for the equipment, ang ating amortization dyan is 9,600. Tapos, addition yan. So, addition yan sa net income or decrease yan in net loss. Again, ano tong 9,600? Paano yun na-compute? So, na-compute yan as 45,600 divided by 57 months times 12 months. So, this time, 12 months na tong 9,600. So, ito na ay for 1 year, January to December. So, ibig sabihin, itong 9,600, yan yung difference ng annual depreciation ni equipment based doon sa book value on April 1 at yung annual depreciation ng equipment based naman doon sa fair value ng equipment on April 1. So, para mapatunayan natin na yan talaga yung difference, so compute natin yung depreciation nila for 1 year. So, para dun sa fair value na 524,400, ang 1 year depreciation niya is 110,400. So, yan ay na-compute as 524,400 divided by 57 times 12 months. Then, para naman dun sa April 1 book value, ang annual depreciation naman nun ay 120,000 pesos, which is computed as 570,000 divided by 57 months times 12 months. At ang difference ng dalawang yan ay 9,600, which is a decrease in depreciation expense. Dapat daw from 120 to 110,400 kasi kaya nagka-net loss in associate ng 48,000 pesos kasi ang depreciation na ginamit dyan is 120,000 pesos. Pero sa point of view natin, dapat daw ang depreciation niya is 110,400. Kaya babawasan natin yung depreciation by adding the 9,600 pesos, assuming the depreciation method is straight line method. Tapos, dito tayo sa land. Again, yung 50,000 pesos na undervaluation ng land will only be amortized if yung land will have an effect on the comprehensive income, which in 2021, hindi uli yun mangyayari. So, walang transactions na makaka-apekto sa comprehensive income related sa land. So, kaya ito lang yung ating amortization of excess over carrying amount. So, kaya pwede natin makompute yung comprehensive loss ni associate sa point of view natin. At magkano yun? So, for the net loss, siya ay ngayon 38,400. So, ang net loss talaga ni associate sa point of view natin is hindi 48,000 pesos. Siya ay 38,400 lang. At yung other comprehensive loss niya, since wala naman tayong adjustment. So, kung ano yung other comprehensive loss niya, sa point of view niya, yun din yung sa point of view natin. 8,000 pesos din. And syempre, etong amounts na to ay for 100%. And kukunin lang syempre natin yung share natin, which is 25%. So, i-multiply natin sa ating percentage of ownership. So, sa net loss, ang share natin is 9,600. At yan yung share natin sa comprehensive income ni associate together with the 25% share natin sa OCL niya. So, that is 2,000 pesos. So, ngayon, balik tayo sa journal entry. So, dahil nagkaroon ng comprehensive loss si associate, magdi-decrease ang kanyang equity. So, dapat gayahin din natin yon. Same effect sa ating investment in associate. Pero, ang gagamitin nating amount syempre is based doon sa point of view natin. At ang kukunin lang natin is up to the extent of our ownership, which is 25%. At since magdidecrease ang kanyang equity, so magdidecrease ang investment in associate. Kaya para magdecrease ang investment in associate, siya ay credit investment in associate. Magkano? Syempre, yung total nitong dalawa, 9,600 at 2,000 pesos. That is 11,600 pesos. So, paano natin i-record yung 11,600 pesos? So, syempre, yung 11,600, dalawa ang component niya, isang net loss at OCL. So, magkahiwalay din ang recording nun. Kasi magkaiba ang P&L sa OCI. So, unahin natin ang OCL. So, debit tayo ng share in OCL of associate for 2,000 pesos. Tapos, dito naman sa 9,600, tayo ay mag-debit share in the loss of associate for 9,600 pesos. So, since mga losses to, kaya debit balances itong dalawa. So, hindi ko pwedeng i-record to ng iisang account lang kasi magkaiba itong 9,600 at 2,000 kasi nga itong 9,600 ay sa P&L at itong 2,000 sa OCI. So, ngayon, punta tayo sa financial statement presentation. So, ano ang magiging itsura ng ating financial statements? So, sa statement of comprehensive income, makikita natin yung 9,600 na share natin sa loss. Again, syempre, sa computation ng net income, the P&L. Then, yung 2,000 na share natin, loss din yun, pero dun yun sa OCI. Sa baba siya ng net income. Then, sa ating balance sheet, ang ating investment in associate is still presented in the non-current asset section. So, siya ngayon ay 1,488,450. Siyempre, na-compute yan as 1,517,500. Yan yung beginning balance natin in 2021. Tapos, minus natin yung dividend na binawas natin in 2021. Tapos, minus din syempre itong 11,600 pesos. Tapos, ang nasa shareholders equity section natin cumulative other comprehensive income or loss is now 1,250 pesos. Paano naging 1,250 pesos? Kasi nga cumulative, di ba? Simula umpisa. Ibig sabihin, yan yung 3,250 tsaka yung negative 2,000. So, syempre, ang difference ng dalawa ay 1,250 income. So, ngayon, punta tayo sa following year, which is 2022. So, ang sabi rito, on May 1, 2022, ABC Companies sold 30,000 DEF ordinary shares at fair value for 20 pesos per share. The decrease resulted to ABC losing its significant influence over DEF company. Therefore, the remaining shares were reclassified as an equity investment not held for trading without electing fair value through other comprehensive income as its measurement basis. So, sabi, in 2022, binenta ni ABC Company yung investment niya in DEF ordinary shares equal to 30,000 ordinary shares. So, ilang shares ba ang investment ni ABC Company kay DEF Company? Yun ay 100,000 shares. So, bakit 100,000 shares? Kasi, initially, meron tayong 20,000 shares. Yun yung una nating acquisition. Tapos, nagkaroon tayo ng additional purchase, which is yung additional 15% at yun naman ay equal to 30,000 shares. So, ang total nun is 50,000 shares. Tapos, nagkaroon tayo ng share split na 2 for 1. Kaya, yung 50,000 shares natin, naging 100,000 shares na siya. Kaya, sa ABC Company, as of May 1, 2022, meron siyang hawak-hawak na total shares na 100,000. At binenta niya doon yung 30,000 shares. And again, yung 100,000 shares na yon, yun ay 25% ng total outstanding shares ni DEF Corporation. At dahil daw dito sa sale na to, nawala ang significant influence ni ABC over DEF. So, dahil nawala ang significant influence, which is yun yung requirement for us to account our investment under the equity method. So, ang gagawin natin, we can no longer use the equity method in accounting for our investment kasi nga we lost the very single requirement under equity method, that is the significant influence. At i-reclassify natin siya at ano ang reclassification na gagamitin natin, again, based sa ating business model. Ang sabi rito, yung remaining shares daw will not be held for trading pero hindi inelect ni entity yung FVOCI. So, ang gagamitin natin instead is FVPL. So, siya ay fair value through profit or loss. Tapos, the net income of DEF for the 4-month period ending April 30, 2022 amounted to 30,000 pesos. So, sabi niya, there is no fair value change on DEF's investment in equity instrument. So, since binenta ni ABC Company yung kanyang 30,000 shares on May 1, 2022, so bago natin i-record yung journal entry for the sale of the investment, kailangan muna natin i-update yung investment in associate na account. And again, ano yung update na kailangan nating malaman? Syempre, kailangan nating i-recognize yung changes sa equity ni associate for the 4-month period, simula January 1 until date of sale, which is ano ba yung mga possible transactions ni associate that will have an effect on its shareholders equity. Kasi nga gagayahin natin yung changes sa kanyang shareholders equity. So kahit binenta natin siya in 2022, since associate pa natin si DEF from January until May 1, so kailangan pa rin natin gawin yung equity method from January until May 1. So kaya kailangan pa rin natin gayahin yung any movement ng equity ni associate until date of sale. So kaya kailangan nating i-recognize yung share natin sa net income or comprehensive income ni associate for the 4-month period. Pero bago yun, let us determine the remaining percentage of ownership ni ABC Company over DEF Company. So, ang remaining shares na lang ni ABC Company is 70,000 shares. Again, ang total shares na hawak ni ABC is 100,000 DEF ordinary shares. Binenta niya yung 30,000, so ang natitira na lang is 70,000 ordinary shares. So para malaman natin yung percentage of ownership, kailangan nating ma-identify yung total outstanding ordinary shares ni DEF. So, ilang shares ang outstanding ni DEF? So, gamit yung 100,000 shares natin na previously hawak-hawak natin before the sale, so yan daw ay 25%, di ba? So 25% daw ito ng total outstanding shares ni DEF. So ibig sabihin, 100,000 shares divided by 0.25, ang total outstanding ordinary shares ni DEF is 400,000 shares. Yan ay after split up na 2 for 1. Kasi nga, bago mag-split up, ang outstanding shares ni DEF is only 200,000 shares. And syempre, split up siya na 2 for 1, so nadoble siya. So, 70,000, the remaining shares, divided by 400,000, that is 18%. So, kaya nawala ang significant influence kasi bumaba ang ating percentage of ownership lower than 20%. So, yan ang ating remaining percentage of ownership. At dahil dyan, nawala ang significant influence, kaya hindi na tayo mag-equity method. So ngayon, let us now prepare our journal entry on May 1, 2022, the date of sale. So ang una natin gagawin is i-update yung ating investment in associate na account at paano natin siya update. So kailangan pa rin natin siyang i-account under equity method from January to date of sale. So kailangan pa rin natin gayahin yung changes in equity ni associate during that 4-month period. And again, ang change in the shareholders' equity ni associate will be coming from its comprehensive income. So, since wala namang dividend declaration si associate during those 4 months, so walang dividend na nakaapekto sa equity ni associate, so wala ring dividend na makakaapekto sa investment in associate na account. Pero since meron siyang net income during the 4-month period, so may effect yon sa shareholders' equity niya. So, ibig sabihin, may effect din yon sa investment in associate ni ABC Company. So, kumpitin muna natin yung net income niya for the 4-month period, again, based sa ating point of view. So, sabi rito sa problem, merong net income si associate for the 4-month period at yun ay 30,000 pesos. At wala dong change sa fair value ng equity instrument ni DEF na measured at FBOCI. So, 0 to. So, ang ibig sabihin, comprehensive income niya during the 4-month period is only 30,000 pesos. So, yung 30,000 na yan, syempre, sa point of view niya yan. Ang tanong, yan ba ang sa point of view natin? Syempre, hindi. Kasi meron pa tayong i-amortize. At ano yun? Syempre, yung hindi pa na-amortize. So, ano ba rito sa apat na to na under and over valuation ang hindi pa na-amortize? So, eto na lang equipment ang hindi pa ubos, pati yung land, hindi pa siya ubos. Pero syempre, again, yung land kasi, hindi natin siya i-amortize kasi hindi siya nakaka-apekto sa comprehensive income ni associate. Kasi nga, hindi naman siya depreciable asset at hindi pa rin naman siya binebenta. So, wala pa siyang effect sa comprehensive income. So, kahit dito sa 4-month period na to, wala pa rin effect yung land sa comprehensive income ni DEF. Pero tong equipment na to, syempre, may effect pa din yan sa comprehensive income ni DEF company kasi dine-depreciate pa yung equipment na yan until 2022. So, kailangan natin i-amortize ulit itong 45,600 for 4 months kasi titigil lang naman tayo ng amortization nitong excess kapag naubos na. Katulad dito sa FVOCI tsaka sa inventory, hindi na natin to in-amortize in 2021 kasi nga 2020 pa lang ubos na agad tong 15 tsaka 5 for FA, FVOCI tsaka inventory. Pero yung equipment, hindi pa naman siya nauubos. Kailan mauubos tong 45,600? Supposedly, dapat mauubos yan until the end of useful life. Eh, hindi pa naman tapos yung useful life niya, di ba? So, ibig sabihin, i-amortize pa rin natin to for 4 months. Again, 4 months na lang kasi yun na lang yung natitirang buwan na i-account natin ang ating investment under equity method. So, itong 50,000 pesos na to, hindi na natin to ma-amortize kasi on May 1, hindi na equity method yung accounting treatment natin for our investment. So, during this 4-month period, eto na lang again ang i-amortize natin, 45,600, pero only for 4 months. And that is 3,200. So, yan, 3,200 na yan, syempre yan ay 45,600 divided by 57 months times 4 months. So, yan lang ang ating adjustments. So, meron tayo ngayong adjusted na 33,200 na net income. So, yan na yung net income sa 4 na buwan ni DEF company. Siyempre, sa point of view natin. At siyempre, wala siyang OCI. So, kukunin lang natin yung share natin dyan, which is 25%. So, ang share natin dyan is 8,300. So, yan yung amount na i-record natin as an increase in our investment in associate for 4 months. So, since net income yung 4 months ni DEF Corporation, so increase yon in equity niya. So, increase din yon sa investment in associate natin. Kaya, to increase the investment in associate, tayo ay debit investment in associate 8,300 tas credit share in profit or income of associate for 8,300 pesos. Ngayon, pwede na nating i-record yung journal entry for the sale. Sabi rito, binenta ni ABC 30,000 shares. Magkano daw isa? 20 pesos per share. Pero kung natatandaan nyo, meron tayong dividend receivable from DEF Corporation. Nirecord natin yon on December 1. Tapos, marireceive dapat natin yung dividend na yon on May 31. Pero ang date of record is April 1. Ang date of sale natin is May 1. So, ibig sabihin, kung ang date of declaration is December 1, tapos, ang date of payment is May 31 at ang date of record is April 1. Tapos, binenta natin yung 30,000 ordinary shares ng May 1 which is between date of record at date of payment. It means yung fair value ng DEF ordinary shares during this period is already ex-dividend which already exclusive of the dividend. Hindi nakasama doon yung dividend. Kaya yung 20 pesos na fair value, para na lang talaga yon doon sa ordinary share. So, since dito natin binenta yung 30,000 na shares, ibig sabihin, tayo pa rin ang may-ari ng 30,000 shares as of the date of record. At tayo pa rin yung shareholder na nakalista rito as of date of record. Kaya, tayo pa rin yung makaka-receive ng dividend na related doon sa 30,000 ordinary shares. Dito sa date of payment. So, meron lang akong correction dun sa na-record ko na May 1, 2022, yung related dun sa sale nung 30,000 ordinary shares at yung reclassification ng 70,000 ordinary shares. Kasi yung na-record ko dun ay gain on reclassification lang. Pero actually kasi dapat dalawa yung ating i-record. Meron tayo dapat na gain or loss on sale of the investment kasi meron tayong binenta. Tapos yung gain on reclassification, yun lang yung related sa retained interest na natira which is yung 70,000 ordinary shares. So let us prepare the journal entry again for the sale of the investment and the retained interest. So, unahin natin yung sa sale. So, debit tayo ng cash and that is 600,000 pesos. Again, that is 300. Again, this is 30,000 ordinary shares times 20 pesos na fair value per share. Tapos, credit tayo ng investment in associate. So, since nakapag-update tayo ng ating investment in associate as of May 1, 2022, so ang investment in associate balance natin as of the date of sale, May 1, 2022 is itong 1,508,450 plus 8,300. So, meron tayo ngayong 1,516,750 pesos. At ito ang carrying value ng ating investment in associate as of the date of sale. At syempre, ito ay para sa buong 100,000 ordinary shares. At since 30,000 ordinary shares lang ang binenta natin, so kukunin lang natin yung portion ng related sa 30,000 ordinary shares. At siya ay 455,025 pesos. So, syempre, yan ay na-compute as 3/10 or 30,000 ordinary shares over 100,000 ordinary shares. And since we collected 600,000, which is more than its carrying value, so meron tayo ngayong gain on sale of investment na 144,975 pesos. Then ngayon, yan yung 30,000 ordinary shares sold. So, doon naman tayo sa 70,000 ordinary shares na hindi nabenta. And again, since nawala ang significant influence, so hindi na siya investment in associate. Hindi na tayo pwedeng gumamit ng equity method. Since bumaba ang ating percentage of ownership, so kaya ang ating retained interest, yung natitira, kailangan natin siyang i-measure under IFRS 9. At ang gagamitin nating account title is Financial Asset at FBPL. So siya ay 1.4 million. 70,000 ordinary shares times the fair value. Kasi ito yung kailangan nating i-reclassify or i-remeasure at fair value. At ang fair value niya on this date is 20 pesos. Then, credit natin yung investment in associate. Syempre, based pa din yan sa carrying value na 1,516,750. At kukunin lang natin yung portion ng 70,000 and that is 1,061,725. So, na-compute yan as 7/10. And syempre, may difference tong dalawa. Ibig sabihin, gain yan. Gain on reclassification na 338,275 pesos. Tapos ngayon, dahil wala na tayong investment in associate na account, so dapat tanggalin na rin natin yung related OCI na nire-record natin dahil dito sa ating associate. At ano yung OCI na nire-record natin dito dahil sa associate? Yun yung OCI na nanggagaling sa investment ni associate. So, itong 1,250 pesos na to na makikita sa balance sheet sa shareholders equity section. So, itong 1,250 na to, nire-record natin to as our share in the OCI of DEF. So, since hindi na tayo mag-equity method, so dapat tatanggalin na rin natin to kasi nagkaroon lang naman tayo ng ganito sa libro natin kasi ginagamit natin yung equity method. But since hindi na nga equity method as of May 1, tatanggalin na natin to. So, paano natin tatanggalin to? So, itong 1,250 pesos na to, tatanggalin natin to sa ating libro. Syempre, parehas dun sa procedure na gagawin ni DEF kung yan ay tatanggalin din niya. Pero syempre, hindi pa yan tatanggalin ni DEF sa libro niya. Kasi, meron pa rin naman talaga siyang investment in OCI. Tayo lang yung magtatanggal sa libro natin. Bakit? Kasi nga, hindi na tayo mag-equity method. Diba ang equity method, ginagaya natin kung ano yung ginagawa ni associate. Since hindi na tayo mag-equity method, hindi na natin siya gagayahin. So, wala nang dahilan para i-retain pa natin yung OCI na yan. Kasi kaya nga tayo nagkaroon ng OCI na yan dahil ginagaya natin siya. So, dahil hindi na natin siya gagayahin, tatanggalin na natin siya. So, para tanggalin yan, again, is same procedure kung paano siya tinatanggal ni associate. So, since ito ay galing sa investment in equity ni DEF, at alam naman natin na kapag ang equity instrument ay classified as FBOCI, yung OCI na nire-record ay hindi nire-recycle. Ibig sabihin, dinediretsyong sinasara sa retained earnings. Kaya ganun din yung gagawin natin dito. So, itong 1,250 na yan, since yan ay related sa equity investment ni DEF classified as FBOCI, so yan ay hindi natin i-recycle. So, yan ay diretsyong isasara sa retained earnings. So, kaya ang ating journal entry is Debit cumulative other comprehensive income, 1,250. So, debit yan kasi yung 1,250, ito ay income. So, para syempre, i-zero out yung income. So, i-debit natin. At isasara siya directly sa retained earnings kasi without recycling. So, credit retained earnings, 1,250 pesos. So, ngayon, let us discuss change in ownership. So, yung change in ownership simply means nagkaroon ng change sa percentage of ownership. At dalawa ang possible na mangyari syempre doon. Either madagdagan ang iyong percentage of ownership o kaya naman mabawasan ang iyong percentage of ownership. And since yung iyong percentage of ownership, doon nakadepende ang iyong voting rights. So, ibig sabihin, magkakaroon din siya possible ng effect sa significant influence. Either ma-retain mo ang significant influence o kaya naman mawala mo yung significant influence mo over the associate. So, dito muna tayo mag-focus sa loss of significant influence. So, kapaano daw kung mawawala ang iyong significant influence over the associate kapag nagkaroon ka ng change in ownership? Siyempre, kapag nawala ang significant influence, dapat i-discontinue mo na ang application of the equity method. And this is based on paragraph 22 of PAS 28. So, unahin natin yung increase. So, kapag daw nagkaroon ng increase sa percentage of ownership mo at nawala yung significant influence, ibig sabihin, nawala yung significant influence mo kasi hindi lang significant influence ang kaya mong i-exercise over the investee. So, dahil tumaas ang ownership mo, tumaas ang iyong voting rights. So, from significant influence, tumaas din ang iyong kayang i-exercise over the investee. And that is control. At kapag nagkaroon ka ng control over the investee, hindi na associate ang tawag mo sa kanya. Ang tawag mo na ngayon sa kanya is a subsidiary. Kaya, if the investment becomes a subsidiary, the entity shall account for its investment in accordance with IFRS 3 Business Combinations and IFRS 10 for Consolidated Financial Statements. So, etong increase in the ownership which resulted to a loss of significant influence pero nag-gain naman siya ng control. Ito ngayon yung tinatawag nating control achieved in stages, which is basically similar dun sa concept ng significant influence achieved in stages, wherein we obtained significant influence or control, which is the result of several acquisitions of ownership from the investee. So, paano naman kapag nag-decrease? So, syempre kapag nag-decrease at nawala ang significant influence mo, ititigil mo na rin syempre dapat ang application ng equity method. Tapos, kapag nawala ang iyong significant influence, ang concern mo dito is how you will account for the remaining investment. So, yun yung tinatawag natin ditong retained interest. Yan yung remaining instrument na pagmamay-ari mo pa din as a result of that change in ownership. Yan na lang yung natitira. So, if the retained interest, yung natitira, in the former associate or joint venture is a financial asset, the entity daw shall measure the retained interest at fair value. So, kaya kanina, nung binenta natin yung 30,000 ordinary shares ni DEF, so bumaba yung ating ownership from 25 naging 18%. So, ang assumption natin, as the ownership decreases, so we also lost significant influence over the associate. So, that is the time we discontinue the application of the equity method. And we remeasured the retained interest. At ang retained interest natin kanina is 70,000 ordinary shares ni DEF. So, ni-remeasure natin yon at fair value. The fair value of the retained interest shall be regarded as its fair value on initial recognition as a financial asset in accordance with IFRS 9. So, yung natira natin kaninang 70,000 ordinary shares kay DEF company, which is only 18% ownership, so ni-remeasure natin yun at fair value on the date of reclassification, which is the date we lost the significant influence over the investee. So, sabi niya, ang accounting treatment na daw natin doon ay hindi na under PAS 28. Ang accounting treatment na natin will be under IFRS 9, which is yung either fair value model tayo or cost model if unquoted shares. Pero syempre, mas preferred ang fair value model. At ang ginamit natin kanina is FVPL. Tapos, the entity shall recognize in profit or loss any difference between the fair value of any retained interest. Ito yung sa 70,000, yung fair value ng 70,000 ordinary shares natin, and any proceeds from disposing of a part interest in the associate or joint venture. So, etong proceeds na to, ito yung cash collections natin na natanggap from the sale of the 30,000 ordinary shares ni DEF. So, yung total nun, yung total ng fair value ng 70,000 ordinary shares, the retained interest, at yung proceeds from the sale of 30,000 ordinary shares, kukunin mo yung difference nun sa carrying amount ng ating investment in associate at the date the equity method was discontinued. And again, yung date we discontinued the equity method is syempre yung date we lost the significant influence, and that is on May 1. At since yun yung date na diniscontinue natin yung equity method, in-update muna natin yung investment in associate account natin. Ni-recognize muna natin yung changes in the investment in associate na account until the date the equity method was discontinued, which is May 1. Tapos, yung difference na yun na tinutukoy na i-recognize sa profit or loss, yun yung nirecord natin kaninang gain on sale of investment para dun sa 30,000 ordinary shares at yung gain on reclassification na para doon naman sa retained interest na 70,000 ordinary shares. Tapos, when an entity discontinues the use of equity method, the entity shall account for all amounts previously recognized in other comprehensive income in relation to that investment on the same basis as would have been required if the investee had directly disposed of the related assets or liabilities. So, kaya kanina, yung OCI na meron tayo, si ABC Company, na nire-record niya sa kanyang libro, which is related sa OCI ni investee, ni associate, tinanggal natin siya sa OCI at diniretso natin siyang nilipat sa retained earnings. Kasi yung OCI na yon is OCI dahil sa associate. Since hindi na natin siya associate, so dapat matanggal na rin yung OCI na nire-record natin dahil sa associate. So, nilipat natin siya sa retained earnings kasi yung OCI na yon na based sa OCI ni associate, yun ay OCI ng equity investments ni associate. And since yun ay OCI from the equity investment ni associates, ang OCI na yun ay hindi nire-recycle. So, yun ay diretsyong sinasara sa retained earnings. Kaya, ganun din yung treatment natin ng pagsasara ng OCI. Same basis sa kung paano isasara ni associate, which is idiretso sa retained earnings. Kaya yung OCI na nirecord natin na galing kay associate, sinara natin siya diretso sa retained earnings without recycling. So, paano naman kapag nagkaroon ng change in ownership pero hindi naman nawala ang significant influence? Ibig sabihin, na-retain ang significant influence. So, syempre, kapag nag-increase, ibig sabihin, yung increase in the ownership is not sufficient to obtain control. So, ibig sabihin, significant influence pa rin ang na-exercise mo. Kaya, investment in associate mo pa din siya. So, hindi mo siya i-reclassify. Tapos, kapag nag-decrease naman daw under paragraph 25, so, if an entity's ownership interest in an associate or joint venture is reduced, but the investment continues to be classified either as an associate or joint venture respectively, the entity shall reclassify to profit or loss the proportion of the gain or loss that had been recognized in other comprehensive income relating to that reduction in ownership interest if that gain or loss would be required to be reclassified to profit or loss on the disposal of the related assets or liabilities. So, dito naman, ibig sabihin nito, kung meron tayong OCI na nire-record dahil kay associate, so yung OCI na nire-record natin, i-reclassify natin or i-recycle natin ngayon siya sa profit or loss based doon sa amount or sa percentage of ownership na nawala sa atin. So, yun yung under paragraph 25. Then, under paragraph 24 naman, if an investment in associate becomes an investment in a joint venture or vice versa, the entity continues to apply the equity method and does not remeasure the retained interest. So, regardless kung associate to joint venture or from joint venture to associate, still, ang gagamitin natin is the equity method which is based on PAS 28. So, there will be no remeasurement. Then, ang next entry natin is on May 31, 2022. So, ano yung mangyayari sa May 31, 2022? So, dito na yung date of payment nung dividendo na dineclare nung December 1, 2021. At yun yung 17,500 para doon sa 25% ownership natin nung 2021. So, ang entrada natin, syempre, dahil collection na to, debit cash, 17,500. Again, yung 17,500 na yan yung dividendo para doon sa ating 100,000 ordinary shares previously owned. Which is kasama pa din dyan yung dividendo na para doon sa 30,000 ordinary shares na binenta natin. Kasi nga, tayo yung shareholder pa rin noon as of date of record. Kasi binenta nga natin yung 30,000 ordinary shares between date of record at date of payment, which is yung fair value niya rito is ex-dividend. Ang ibig sabihin kasi ng ex-dividend, pwede nating ibenta yung shares separately from the dividend. Kasi kapag dividends on, hindi mo pwedeng ibenta yung dividendo without also selling the related dividend. Kapag dividends on kasi, dalawa ang binibenta mo. Binibenta mo yung shares at yung related na dividendo. Pero kapag ex-dividend, pwede mong ibenta yung shares without selling the related dividends. Kaya tayo ay debit cash, 17,500 at credit dividend receivable for 17,500 pesos. So ngayon, ang lalabas sa ating income statement is itong gain on reclassification. Part yan ng profit or loss, pati pa rin yung share in income of associate. So makikita pa rin yan sa ating statement of comprehensive income doon sa profit or loss section. Tapos, syempre, wala nang cumulative other comprehensive income na related doon sa OCI na ginagaya natin from the associate. So, that ends our discussion for investment in associate. Under, syempre, equity method, PAS 28. So, class dismiss.